I left Denver at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd checked my phone twice before pulling out of my sister's driveway, debating whether I should just crash on her couch and leave in the morning. But I had a presentation at 9, and the drive back to Cheyenne was only 90 minutes. I'd done it 100 times. The first hour was fine. I had a podcast playing, something about unsolved disappearances that I wasn't really paying attention to. The highway was empty, which was normal for a weeknight. Maybe I passed 3 or 4 cars total. The road was straight, the lines were bright, and my tank was 3/4 full. Everything was routine. Around the 50-minute mark, I noticed my phone had lost signal. Not unusual out here. There are dead zones all along this stretch, places where the towers just don't reach. I turned off the podcast since it kept buffering and switched to FM radio. Static on most channels. Finally, I found a classic rock station playing Hotel California, and I left it there. That's when I saw the gas station. It was one of those old independents, not a chain. The sign said, "Last Stop," in faded red letters, and 2 of the pumps were lit by a single flickering overhead light. The building itself looked closed. Windows dark, no cars in the lot. But the pumps were on. I almost kept driving, but my gauge had dropped faster than I expected. I must have been pushing the AC harder than I thought. I pulled in. The silence hit me as soon as I turned off the engine. No wind, no insects, just the hum of that overhead light and the faint buzz of the pumps. I swiped my card and started filling up, keeping my eyes on the dark building. The windows were too black. Not just unlit, black, like something was blocking them from the inside. I finished pumping and got back in the car faster than I needed to. As I pulled onto the highway, I glanced at the rearview mirror. The gas station was gone. Not dark, not distant, just gone. I told myself it was a curve in the road, a dip in the landscape. But I knew that stretch. It was flat for miles. I turned the radio back up. The classic rock station was gone. Every channel was static now except one. A man's voice, low and calm, reading numbers. 4, 7, 2, 9. 4, 7, 2, 9. Over and over. I switched it off. That's when I saw the mile marker. 147. I'd passed it 10 minutes ago. I slowed down, checking my mirrors, my speedometer, my GPS. No signal still, but the road looked right. Same lanes, same lines, same darkness pressing in on both sides. I kept driving. 5 minutes later, another mile marker, 147. My hands started sweating. I sped up, pushing 75, then 80. The road stayed straight. No turns, no exits. But 8 minutes later, there it was again. Mile marker 147. I pulled over, hazards on, and grabbed my phone. Still no signal. I tried to load the map anyway, but the screen just showed a blank grid. No roads, no labels, just a blue dot in the center. Me, and nothing else. That's when I saw the headlights behind me. They were distant, maybe half a mile back, but they were coming fast. I waited, thinking maybe it was a cop, someone who could help, but as the lights got closer, they slowed. Matching my speed exactly. They stopped about 100 feet behind me and just sat there. I pulled back onto the road and accelerated. The headlights followed, keeping the same distance. I slowed. They slowed. I sped up to 90. They stayed 100 feet back. I don't know how long that went on. 10 minutes? 20? Time felt wrong. My phone said 1:03 a.m., but it had said 12:52 when I pulled over. That was more than 10 minutes ago. Then I saw him, a man, standing on the shoulder, facing the road. He was wearing a dark coat and his hands were in his pockets. As I passed, he didn't turn his head, didn't move, just stood there staring straight ahead. 2 minutes later, I saw him again. Same man, same coat, same position. Exactly the same. I started crying. I didn't mean to. It just came out. This sudden wave of panic that made my chest tight and my vision blur. I wiped my eyes and focused on the road, looking for anything different, any sign, any exit. The headlights were still behind me. Then the radio turned on by itself. That same voice. 4, 7, 2, 9. But slower now. Deliberate. And then it said something else. "You're going the wrong way." I screamed and slammed the brakes. The car behind me swerved and passed, taillights disappearing into the dark. It was just a sedan, empty as far as I could tell, but it was gone in seconds, and I was alone again. I sat there shaking, trying to breathe, and then I saw light ahead. Bright, white, fluorescent light. A truck stop. Real. Solid. I could see people inside through the windows. I drove toward it like my life depended on it. The place was busy. 3 semis in the lot. A family at one of the booths. The clerk barely looked up when I walked in. I bought a coffee I didn't drink, and asked how far to Cheyenne. He said 40 minutes. I was back on track. Whatever had happened, it was over. I made it home at 2:30 a.m. I didn't sleep. The next day, I checked my dashcam footage. I'd forgotten I even had it running. Most of it was normal, just me driving, the road ahead lit by my headlights. But there's one part, right around the time I passed that man on the shoulder, where the camera glitches. The image stutters, pixelates, and for just a fraction of a second, there's a face pressed against the passenger window. I live alone, and my windows were up the whole time. I deleted the footage, but I can still see it when I close my eyes. I was driving from Portland to Seattle for a job interview. It was supposed to be a simple 4-hour drive, but my boss called at the last minute and asked me to cover a late shift. By the time I got on the road, it was almost midnight. I thought about getting a hotel, but the interview was at 7 in the morning, and I couldn't afford to miss it. So I filled up a thermos with coffee, plugged in my phone, and headed north on I-5. The interstate was quiet. A few trucks, some scattered cars, nothing unusual. I had my playlist going, indie rock, stuff I could sing along to without thinking. My eyes were tired, but the caffeine was doing its job. I figured I'd be fine. Around 1:30 a.m. I started feeling it. That heavy, drooping sensation behind my eyes. I'd been driving for 90 minutes straight, and my body was done. I knew I shouldn't push it. There was a rest stop coming up in 12 miles according to the sign. I'd pull over, close my eyes for 20 minutes, and get back on the road. The rest stop appeared exactly when the sign said it would. It was small, just a bathroom building, a few picnic tables, and a parking lot with space for maybe a dozen cars. There were 2 other vehicles there, a white van near the far end and a white sedan closer to the building. Both were empty as far as I could tell. I parked under one of the lights, closer to the bathrooms, and kept my doors locked. I set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I tried, but something felt off. The air was too still. There was no sound. No wind, no distant traffic, nothing. Just silence. After 5 minutes, I gave up and sat up straight, planning to just rest my eyes until the timer went off. That's when I noticed the van had moved. It was still in the parking lot, but now it was 3 spaces closer to me. I stared at it, trying to convince myself I just remembered wrong. Maybe it had always been there, but I knew it hadn't. I'd looked right at it when I parked. It had been at the far end. I turned my car on, ready to leave, but then I saw the sedan. It had moved too. It was now directly behind me, blocking me in. My heart started hammering. I put the car in drive and yanked the wheel, pulling forward and around the sedan. As I passed it, I looked inside. Empty. No one in the front seat. No one in the back. I hit the gas and headed for the exit, but there wasn't one. I circled the lot twice, looking for the ramp back to the interstate. It was gone. The road I'd driven in on just wasn't there anymore. Instead, there was a concrete barrier and beyond it, thick trees pressing in close. I stopped the car, breathing hard, and checked my mirrors. The van was behind me again. Closer now, maybe 10 feet away. I drove to the other side of the lot, putting distance between us. My phone had no signal. I tried calling 911 anyway. Nothing. I opened my Maps app, but it wouldn't load. Just a spinning circle on a gray screen. The bathroom building had a light on inside. I could see it through the small frosted windows near the roofline. I thought maybe someone was in there. Someone who could help. I left my car running, doors locked, and walked toward the building. The door was propped open with a rock. Inside, the lights were fluorescent and buzzing. The floor was wet, but there were no puddles, just a slick, even dampness that covered everything. It smelled like chlorine and something else. Something rotten underneath. "Hello?" My voice echoed. No response. I checked the stalls. All empty. Doors hanging open. But in the last one, there was something written on the wall in black marker. "Don't go back to your car." I ran. I didn't think. I just ran back to my car, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. The van was right next to me now, driver's side window facing mine. I couldn't see inside, the glass was tinted too dark, but I knew someone was in there. I could feel it. I reversed hard, tires squealing, and drove toward the trees, looking for any gap, any path, anything that might lead back to the road. That's when I saw her, a woman standing between two picnic tables. She was wearing a nightgown and no shoes. Her hair was long and wet, hanging in front of her face. She wasn't moving, just standing there. I stopped the car, staring at her. She slowly raised one arm and pointed behind me. I looked in the rearview mirror. The van's headlights turned on. I floored it. I drove straight at the tree line, praying there was a gap I'd missed. And there was a narrow dirt path, barely wide enough for my car. Branches scraped the sides as I pushed through, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out. The path opened onto the interstate. Same road, same lanes, like I'd never left. I merged back into traffic. There were even a few cars now, and I didn't stop driving until I saw the lights of Seattle. I made it to my interview on time. I got the job. Everything went back to normal. But 3 days later, I got a notification on my phone. Someone had airdropped me a photo. I don't know who. It just said iPhone with no name. I opened it without thinking. It was a picture of my car, taken from above, like someone was standing on the roof of the bathroom building. The timestamp said 1:47 a.m. the same night. But here's the thing that made me delete the photo and turn off AirDrop forever. In the picture, my car wasn't empty. There was someone sitting in the passenger seat. I was alone that entire night. I'm sure of it. But in the photo there's a figure. Pale. Wet hair. Facing forward. And the driver's seat, where I was sitting, is empty. I need to tell someone about what happened at Miller's farm last October. I've kept quiet about it for almost a year now, but it's eating at me. My therapist says writing it down might help, so here goes. My name is David. I'm 34, work in IT, completely ordinary life. Last October, my girlfriend Sarah and I decided to do the whole autumn thing. You know, pumpkin picking, hot cider, Instagram photos. We're not usually that kind of couple, but Sarah had been stressed with work, and I thought it would be nice, normal, safe. We drove out to Miller's farm on October 18th. It's about 40 minutes outside the city, one of those family-owned places that's been around forever. We got there around 6:30 p.m., later than we planned because I got held up at work. The sun was already setting, that deep orange October light making everything look like a postcard. We should hurry, Sarah said, checking her phone. They close at 8. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just our Honda and 2 other cars. A faded wooden sign read, Pumpkin Patch, Corn Maze, Hay Rides. An arrow pointed toward a dirt path that curved around a red barn. We walked down the path, our footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. The air smelled like wood smoke and rotting vegetation, that distinct October smell. Sarah was taking photos of everything, laughing, trying to get me to pose. I remember feeling happy, relaxed. The pumpkin patch spread out behind the barn. Maybe 2 acres of orange dotting the brown field. But something felt off immediately. There was no one else there. No families, no staff. Just rows and rows of pumpkins sitting in the dimming light. Hello? I called out. Nothing. Maybe everyone's at the corn maze, Sarah suggested, pointing to a tall wall of dried corn stalks at the far end of the field. A wooden entrance stood there, unlit and uninviting. We walked through the pumpkin patch, looking for good ones. Sarah found a perfectly round one and held it up, grinning. That's when I heard it, a sound from the corn maze, like someone dragging something heavy. A rhythmic scraping, did you hear that? I asked. Sarah shook her head, earbuds in. She'd been listening to music. I pulled one out. There's someone in the maze, I said. She listened. For a moment, silence. Then we both heard it. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Pause. Probably just a worker, she said, but her smile had faded. We decided to check out the maze anyway. Sarah loves that kind of thing. Haunted houses, escape rooms. As we approached the entrance, I noticed there were no lights strung up. no decorations. Most corn mazes I'd been to were festive, especially in October. This one just looked abandoned. A handwritten sign was nailed to the entrance post. Maze closes at dusk. It's past dusk, I pointed out. Just a quick walk through, Sarah said. 5 minutes. I should have said no. The corn was taller than I expected, at least 8 feet, maybe more. The stalks were brown and brittle, some broken and hanging at odd angles. The path was narrow, just wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. 50 feet in, the entrance disappeared behind us, swallowed by the turns. The scraping sound came again. Closer now. Definitely to our left. Hello? Sarah called out. Is someone there? No response. Just the scraping, then silence. We kept walking, taking turns at random. Left, right, straight. The paths all looked identical. After a few minutes, I realized I had no idea how to get back out. Sarah, we should turn around. I think we're almost through, she said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. That's when we heard the footsteps. Not the scraping anymore. Actual footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the corn somewhere nearby. But not on the path. Through the corn itself, I stopped walking. Sarah grabbed my arm. The footsteps stopped too. We stood there, barely breathing, listening. The October wind rustled the dried stalks around us. The sky above was now a deep purple. Stars just beginning to appear. We need to get out of here, I whispered. We turned around and started walking quickly back the way we came. Or what we thought was the way we came. But the paths seemed different now, narrower, the turns coming at odd intervals. Then Sarah stopped so suddenly I almost ran into her. David, she whispered. Look. About 20 feet ahead, standing in the middle of the path, was a scarecrow. I hadn't noticed it before. It was tall, dressed in filthy overalls and a flannel shirt, arms outstretched on a wooden crossbeam. Its head was a burlap sack, tied at the neck, with crude holes cut for eyes. That wasn't there before, Sarah said. It's just a scarecrow, I said. But my voice sounded hollow. We walked toward it, planning to pass by. As we got closer, I could see details in the fading light. The overalls were stained dark, the flannel torn. The burlap head hung at a slight angle, like it was watching us approach. We were about 5 feet away when I saw the scarecrow's hand twitch. Run, I said. We ran. The cornstalks whipped at our faces as we sprinted through the maze, taking turns randomly, just trying to get away. Behind us, I could hear it. Heavy footsteps pounding the dirt, coming fast. Sarah was screaming. I was pulling her along, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. We turned a corner and hit a dead end. A wall of corn. No, 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 Sarah sobbed. The footsteps were getting closer. I could hear breathing now, heavy and wet, just around the corner behind us. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed Sarah and pushed through the cornstalks themselves. They cut at our skin, tore at our clothes, but we broke through, stumbling and falling, crashing through row after row until suddenly we were in the pumpkin patch, the open field. The barn was visible about 100 yards away. We ran. We didn't stop running until we got to our car, locked the doors, and I started the engine with shaking hands. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. Standing at the edge of the corn maze, illuminated by our taillights, was a figure. Tall, wearing overalls and flannel. The burlap head turned slowly, watching us leave. We drove in silence for 20 minutes before either of us spoke. What was that? Sarah finally asked. I don't know. We never reported it. What would we say? We tried to convince ourselves it was just someone in a costume, a worker trying to scare us for fun. The farm was probably doing some kind of Halloween thing. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night. 2 weeks later, I was looking through Sarah's phone, with her permission. She'd asked me to find a photo from that day. I found the pictures she'd taken at the farm. The pumpkin patch, the barn, the sunset, and one photo I didn't remember her taking. It was a selfie. Sarah smiling, me in the background, slightly out of focus. We were in the corn maze, though I don't remember stopping for photos once we went in. But that's not what disturbs me. In the background, behind me, barely visible between the corn stalks, is a face. A burlap face. And it's not 10 feet away. It's right there. Inches behind my head. I zoomed in on the photo. The burlap had what looked like dark stains around the mouth area. The eye holes were empty, completely black, and the timestamp on the photo, 6:47 p.m. We were in that maze for less than 10 minutes, which means it was with us from the beginning. Sarah and I broke up in December. She said I became too paranoid, too obsessed with what happened. She deleted all the photos from that day, but I had already saved that one to my laptop. I've driven past Miller's farm 3 times since then. The pumpkin patch sign is still there, but the whole place looks abandoned. The barn door hangs open. Corn stalks from last year's maize still stand, brown and dead, in the field. And last week I got a notification on my phone. Someone had sent me a friend request on Facebook. No profile picture, no posts. The name was just 2 words, Miller Farm. I haven't accepted it. I'm too afraid to see what would happen if I did. But every night, right around 6:47 p.m., I get a text from an unknown number. It's always the same message. Come back. You forgot your pumpkin. There's this river that runs through the outskirts of Timber Falls, Oregon, that my cousin Marcus and I used to fish religiously. We'd go there with our spinning rods, usually using artificial lures or salmon eggs, and we'd pull out some decent-sized rainbow trout. Those early fishing trips are actually what turned me into the hardcore angler I am today. The river wasn't particularly famous or anything, despite having a solid population of fish year-round. Most people in town avoided it because you had to park off this sketchy dirt road and then trek through about half a mile of dense forest just to reach the good fishing spots. But Marcus and I never minded the hike. In fact, we preferred it that way. The isolation made it feel like we had discovered our own secret paradise that nobody else cared about. Now, anyone who's serious about river fishing knows that the magic hours are either right before sunrise or just as the sun's going down. Most anglers prefer the morning session, getting out there before dawn breaks. But Marcus and I, we had this routine where we'd head out in the late afternoon and fish well into the night. It became our weekend ritual, our version of what other kids our age were probably doing at parties or hanging out at the mall. It was a Saturday evening in late October, and everything was going exactly as planned. We arrived at the river right as the sun was beginning its descent, and by the time we had our lines in the water, the forest around us was already getting dark. We had positioned ourselves on this flat section of riverbank where the current wasn't too strong, a spot we'd fished at least 50 times before. The setup was always the same. 2 folding chairs, a cooler with drinks and snacks, our tackle boxes spread out between us, and our rods propped up on forked sticks we'd jam into the soft earth. About 30 minutes into our session, something weird happened. Marcus got a bite, or at least he thought he did. His rod bent forward sharply, the tip almost touching the water. He grabbed it and started reeling, but whatever was on the other end wasn't fighting back. There was just this dead weight, heavy and unmoving. Marcus kept reeling anyway, grunting with the effort, and I stood up to help him if he needed it. When whatever it was finally broke the surface, both of us just froze. It wasn't a fish. It was a jacket, a thick, waterlogged winter jacket, the kind with a hood and multiple pockets. Marcus managed to drag it onto the riverbank, and we both just stared at it for a minute. The thing was soaked through, covered in river muck and algae, but that wasn't what bothered us. What bothered us was that it looked relatively new, not like something that had been in the water for months or years. The fabric wasn't torn or badly deteriorated. It just looked like someone had recently lost it in the river. Marcus made a joke about it being his lucky day, finding free clothes, but his voice had this nervous edge to it. I didn't laugh. Instead, I suggested we should probably pack up and leave. There was something unsettling about pulling that jacket out of the water, though I couldn't quite articulate why. Marcus disagreed, saying we'd just gotten there, and it was probably just some hiker who'd dropped their jacket upstream. He tossed it aside and we went back to fishing, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I kept glancing over at that jacket lying in a wet heap on the riverbank, and I kept thinking about how cold the water must be this time of year. Why would anyone be in that river wearing a winter jacket? And if they weren't in the river, how did the jacket end up there? About 15 minutes later, Marcus got another bite. This time when he reeled it in, it was a backpack, a full-sized hiking backpack, also soaked and covered in the same river grime. We pulled it onto the bank next to the jacket and just looked at each other. Marcus unzipped it with shaking hands. Inside was a water bottle, some soggy granola bars, a flashlight that no longer worked, and a wallet. I told Marcus not to open the wallet, that we should call the police or something, but he was already flipping it open. There was a driver's license inside, protected by a plastic sleeve. The photo showed a guy in his mid-20s with a beard and a friendly smile. His name was Trevor Addison. Marcus pulled out his phone, saying he was going to see if he could find anything about this person online. But I grabbed his arm and told him we needed to leave right now. That's when we heard it. A splashing sound coming from upstream, maybe 30 or 40 yards away from where we were. It was rhythmic, like someone walking through the shallow part of the river. Marcus and I both turned to look, squinting into the growing darkness. At first I couldn't see anything. The forest was dense and the light was fading fast. But then I saw movement. There was definitely someone in the river, moving slowly in our direction. They were walking against the current, which should have been difficult, but they were moving steadily, almost mechanically. As they got closer, I could make out more details. It was a man, and he was completely submerged up to his chest. He wasn't wearing a shirt, just jeans from what I could tell. And here's the thing that made my blood run cold. It was late October in Oregon. The water temperature couldn't have been more than 45 or 50 degrees. Nobody in their right mind would be walking through that river half naked unless something was seriously wrong. Marcus whispered my name, his voice tight with fear, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The man in the river hadn't noticed us yet, or if he had, he wasn't showing it. He just kept walking downstream in that same steady, unnatural pace. His arms hung at his sides, not moving, not trying to maintain balance, just hanging there like dead weight. I grabbed Marcus's shoulder and gestured toward our gear, silently telling him we needed to pack up immediately. But as we started moving, one of our folding chairs scraped against a rock, making a loud metallic screech that echoed through the forest. The man in the river stopped walking. His head slowly turned in our direction, and even though it was too dark to see his face clearly, I knew he was looking right at us. For several seconds, nobody moved. Marcus and I were frozen in place, and the man in the river just stood there, the current flowing around him. Then, without warning, he started moving toward us, not walking anymore, but wading with purpose, pushing through the water with sudden urgency. That broke the spell. Marcus and I abandoned everything except our phones and started running back toward the trail. Behind us, I could hear splashing getting louder, getting closer. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. The man had climbed out of the river and was sprinting after us through the forest. And I mean sprinting, moving faster than anyone should be able to move through dense undergrowth in near-complete darkness. We ran harder than I've ever run in my life, branches whipping at our faces, our feet catching on roots and rocks. I could hear Marcus's panicked breathing ahead of me. Could hear the crashing sounds of someone chasing us through the woods. The trail back to the car felt impossibly long, like we were running through a nightmare where the destination kept moving further away. At one point, I tripped and went down hard, scraping my hands on the rocky ground. Marcus grabbed my arm and hauled me back to my feet without stopping. Behind us, the crashing sounds had gotten quieter, but I didn't know if that meant our pursuer had given up or if he'd simply gotten better at navigating the dark forest. We finally made it to Marcus's truck and threw ourselves inside. He fumbled with the keys, nearly dropped them, then got the engine started. We peeled out of there, the truck's tires spinning on the dirt road before finally catching traction. Neither of us spoke during the 20-minute drive back to town. We were both breathing hard, both checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. When we finally pulled into a gas station, Marcus called the police. He told them everything: the jacket, the backpack, the wallet belonging to Trevor Addison, and the man who'd chased us. The dispatcher said they'd send someone to check it out and took down our information. 2 days later, a detective called Marcus back. They'd found our fishing gear right where we'd left it, along with the jacket and backpack. They confirmed the items belonged to Trevor Addison, a 26-year-old from Portland who'd been reported missing 3 weeks earlier. He'd told his roommate he was going on a solo camping trip near Timber Falls but never came back. They searched the river and the surrounding forest but didn't find a body. They also didn't find any evidence of the man who'd chased us. The detective asked if we'd be willing to come in and look at some photos, see if we could identify who we'd seen. We agreed, but when they showed us pictures of known criminals and persons of interest in the area, none of them matched. How could they? We'd barely seen the man's face in the darkness. Marcus and I haven't been back to that river since. Part of me wonders if we should have stayed and confronted whoever that was. Maybe gotten answers about what happened to Trevor Addison. But the rational part of my brain knows we did the right thing by running. There was something fundamentally wrong about that man in the river. Something that went beyond just strange behavior. The way he moved through the freezing water. The way he pursued us through the forest in complete darkness. It wasn't natural. Sometimes late at night, I think about Trevor Addison's smiling face in that driver's license photo, and I wonder what happened to him in those woods. And I wonder if that man in the river had anything to do with it. Marcus thinks the man we saw was Trevor himself, that something had happened to him that changed him into whatever we encountered. I don't like that theory. I don't like it at all. But I also don't have a better explanation. The detective told us they're keeping the case open, that they're still looking for Trevor Addison. But it's been months now, and I haven't heard anything new. Sometimes I'll search his name online, hoping to see an update that he's been found safe, but there's never anything. Just the same missing person report from October. Marcus has this idea that we should go back there, in broad daylight this time, and try to find answers. But I've told him absolutely not. Whatever's in those woods, whoever that man in the river was, I have no interest in ever encountering it again. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some places are better left alone. I picked up a hitchhiker once, just once, and I'll never do it again. It was late October, around 2 a.m., and I was driving back from my girlfriend's place in Flagstaff. We'd had a fight, nothing serious, just one of those stupid arguments that feels huge at the time. And I'd left angry, wanting to clear my head with the drive. The route back to Phoenix was long and empty, cutting through the desert on a 2-lane highway that barely saw traffic after dark. I'd been driving for about 40 minutes when I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder, thumb out, lit by my headlights. Older guy, maybe late 50s, wearing a denim jacket and jeans. He had a duffel bag at his feet and a tired expression that seemed genuine. I'm not the kind of person who picks up strangers. I've heard the stories, but something about him felt harmless. Maybe it was because I was still angry and wanted to do something decent to balance it out. Maybe I was just stupid. I pulled over. He jogged up to the passenger window and I rolled it down halfway. "Where you headed?" I asked. "Phoenix," he said. His voice was rough, like he'd been smoking for decades. "Got family there." Car broke down about 10 miles back. I hesitated, my hand still on the gear shift, ready to leave. But then he smiled. This weary, grateful smile. And I unlocked the door. "Thanks, man," he said, tossing his bag in the back and climbing in. "You're a lifesaver." We didn't talk much at first. He stared out the window, and I focused on the road. The desert stretched out on both sides, flat and black under a moonless sky. No other cars. No lights except my headlights cutting through the dark. After about 10 minutes, he broke the silence. "You ever feel like you're driving in circles?" I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "Like, the road just keeps going, but you're not actually getting anywhere." He was still looking out the window. "Happened to me once. Drove for hours, thought I was making progress, but I kept seeing the same damn billboard. Over and over." "That's weird," I said, trying to sound polite but uninterested. I didn't want to encourage conversation. I just wanted to get him to Phoenix and be done with it. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, real weird." Another 20 minutes passed. The radio had been playing classic rock, but the signal started cutting out, replaced by static. I switched it off. The silence felt heavier now. I couldn't explain it, but the air in the car seemed thicker, like it was harder to breathe. That's when I saw the billboard. It was for a casino. Bright red letters on a black background. Lucky 7, 50 miles ahead. I'd never seen it before, but that wasn't unusual. I didn't drive this route often, but then 15 minutes later I saw it again. Same billboard, same message. Lucky 7, 50 miles ahead. I slowed down, staring at it as we passed. My chest tightened. "You see that?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. When I looked over, he was watching me. Not the road, me. His eyes were dark, too dark, and his expression was unreadable. "See what?" he finally said. "That billboard. I passed it twice." He smiled, but it wasn't the same tired smile from before. This one didn't reach his eyes. "Told you. Sometimes you're not getting anywhere." My hands gripped the wheel tighter. I checked the odometer. I'd been driving for over an hour since picking him up. We should have been halfway to Phoenix by now. But the road looked exactly the same. Same flat desert, same empty darkness. I tried my phone. No signal. I tried to stay calm, to think logically, but my heart was pounding now. "Where exactly did your car break down?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I don't remember," he said. "You said 10 miles back." "Did I?" I didn't respond. I just drove faster, watching the speedometer climb to 70, then 80. The road stayed straight. No curves, no turns, just endless asphalt disappearing into the dark. And then I saw the billboard again. "Lucky 7, 50 miles ahead." I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop and I turned to face him. What the hell is going on? He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with those two dark eyes. You shouldn't have stopped, he said quietly. Get out, I said, my voice shaking. Get out of my car, now. He reached for the door handle, slow and deliberate, and pushed it open. But he didn't get out. He just sat there, one foot on the pavement, looking back at me. You can keep driving, he said. But you won't get anywhere, not until you figure it out. Figure what out? He smiled again. Why you picked me up. And then he was gone, not walking away, just gone. The passenger seat was empty, the door hanging open, and his duffel bag was no longer in the back. I sat there, breathing hard, staring at the empty seat. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it, but I couldn't. I reached over and slammed the door shut, then hit the gas. I drove for another hour, maybe more. I don't really remember. At some point the road changed. I saw lights in the distance, Phoenix finally, and I merged onto the interstate like nothing had happened. I made it home just before sunrise. I didn't tell anyone. What would I even say? But a week later, I was going through my glove box looking for my registration, and I found something I'd never seen before. A Polaroid photo, old and faded, tucked under the manual. It was a picture of a car on the side of the road. My car, same make, same model, same license plate, and standing next to the driver's side door, thumb out, was me. I was the hitchhiker. The photo was dated October 1987, 36 years before I was born. I've been driving trucks for 17 years, mostly long-haul routes through northern Ontario, sometimes up into the territories when the pay is right. I've seen my share of weird things out there on those empty highways, strange lights, animals that don't move right, weather that comes out of nowhere. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Highway 599 in February of 2023. It was my third run of the month up to Pickle Lake, the kind of route most drivers avoid in winter. 400 kilometers of nothing but black spruce, frozen lakes, and roads so remote you might not see another vehicle for hours. The temperature that night was sitting at -38°C, cold enough that your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth, cold enough that if your truck breaks down, you've got maybe an hour before hypothermia sets in. I left Thunder Bay around 6 p.m., which meant I'd be driving through the night. I prefer it that way, actually. Less traffic, and the northern lights sometimes put on a show that makes the loneliness worth it. My rig was loaded with construction supplies. Nothing special, just another job. I had my thermos of coffee, a Thriller audiobook downloaded, and a full tank of diesel. Everything was routine. The first 3 hours were uneventful. I passed through Savant Lake around 9, grabbed a quick bite at the truck stop, and continued north. The highway narrowed after that, becoming a thin ribbon of plowed asphalt cutting through an ocean of snow and trees. My headlights were the only light for miles in every direction. Around midnight, I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder of the road, right at the edge of my high beams. A man in a dark winter coat, one arm raised, not frantically waving, just raised. Standing perfectly still in -40 weather, like he was waiting for a bus in downtown Toronto. My first instinct was to keep driving. You don't stop for hitchhikers up here, especially at night. Too many stories of robberies, of people who weren't right in the head wandering these remote highways. But something made me slow down. Maybe it was the fact that stopping here, in this cold, was a death sentence. Maybe it was because I'd want someone to stop for me. I pulled the rig to a stop about 20 meters past him, watching my mirrors. He walked toward the truck with steady, unhurried steps. No shivering, no hunched shoulders against the cold, just walking like it was a spring afternoon. I cracked my window an inch. "You okay, buddy?" He stopped at the bottom of my door. In the red glow of my running lights, I could see he was maybe in his 40s, clean-shaven, with dark hair. His coat looked thin, not nearly warm enough for this weather, but his face wasn't red from cold. His breath wasn't fogging. "Heading north?" he asked. His voice was flat, almost monotone. "Pickle Lake," I said, already regretting this stop. "Where are you trying to get to?" "North is fine." He looked up at me, and I noticed his eyes didn't reflect the light the way they should have. "Can I ride with you?" Every instinct told me to say no, but leaving someone out here was murder, plain and simple. I unlocked the passenger door. Get in. Warm up. He climbed into the cab without a word, moving with an odd, stiff precision. I cranked up the heat and got the truck moving again, trying to shake off the unease settling into my gut. "You got a name?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the road. "Thomas," he said after a long pause. "Thank you for stopping." "No problem." "What were you doing out there? Your car break down?" "Something like that." I waited for him to elaborate, but he just sat there, staring straight ahead through the windshield. His hands were folded in his lap, pale and unnaturally still. I noticed he wasn't wearing gloves. His fingers should have been purple with frostbite, but they looked perfectly normal. We drove in silence for about 20 minutes. The cab should have been warming up, but I felt cold despite the heater blasting. I turned it up higher. "You're not cold?" I finally asked, nodding toward his thin coat. Thomas turned his head to look at me, the movement slow and deliberate, like a camera panning. "No, are you?" "Yeah, actually. Heater's acting up, I think." I tapped the gauge. It was set to maximum. He smiled then. It wasn't a natural smile. His lips pulled back too far, showing too many teeth. "It's going to get much colder." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I focused on the road, hands tight on the wheel. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, trees pressing in on both sides like walls. No turnoffs, no rest stops, nowhere to pull over that wouldn't put us in a snowbank. "So, Thomas, where exactly are you heading?" I tried to keep my voice casual. "Got family up north?" "I'm going back," he said. "I've been gone a long time. Too long. Back home? Back to where I belong." The heater was still blasting, but I could see my breath now. Thin wisps of condensation forming in the air. That wasn't right. That wasn't possible. I glanced at Thomas. He was staring at me with those dark, reflectionless eyes. "Your breath," he said, tilting his head. "It's freezing, just like mine should be." I looked back at the road, my heart starting to hammer. We were coming up on a bridge over the Flint River. I knew this route well enough to know there was nothing but wilderness for another 60 kilometers. "Listen, Thomas, I think— Do you know what happens when you freeze to death?" he interrupted. His voice hadn't changed in pitch or tone since he got in the truck. It was the same flat monotone. "First, your body starts shivering. That's it, trying to generate heat. Then the shivering stops. That's when you know you're dying. Your core temperature drops, your organs start shutting down. But the interesting part is what happens to your mind." I didn't want to ask, but the words came out anyway. "What happens?" "You start to feel warm, peaceful. Some people even start taking off their clothes because they're convinced they're overheating. It's called paradoxical undressing. They find bodies in the snow, half naked, with peaceful expressions on their faces, like they just decided to lie down and sleep." My hands were shaking on the wheel. The temperature gauge on my dashboard was dropping. 70 degrees, 60, 50. "I didn't feel peaceful," Thomas continued. "I felt angry, confused. I kept walking, thinking I'd find help. But the road was empty. Just like tonight. Nobody stopped. Not for hours. I slammed on the brakes. The truck shuddered to a stop in the middle of the highway. "Get out." Thomas didn't move. He turned that horrible mechanical smile on me again. "I can't. I've been waiting out here for 3 years, Mark. 3 years on this road, trying to get home. Everyone who stops, they help me get a little further. But I need to get all the way home. How do you know my name?" My voice was barely a whisper. I'd never told him. He pointed at something on the dashboard. My truck registration, visible through the plastic holder. Mark Davidson. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was what I saw in the side mirror. The road behind us wasn't empty anymore. There were figures standing there, maybe a dozen of them, spaced out along the highway at regular intervals. All of them dressed in inadequate winter clothes. All of them perfectly still. All of them just outside the reach of my taillights. "They're waiting too," Thomas said, following my gaze. "All of us, stuck on the roads where we died, trying to find our way home. You stopping for me, that was kind. But now you're part of the pattern." The cab was freezing now. Frost was forming on the inside of the windshield. My teeth were chattering so hard I could barely speak. What do you want?" "Just to go home, to Pickle Lake. That's where I was heading when my truck went through the ice. If you take me there, you get to leave. If you don't—" He gestured to the figures behind us. You become like us. Forever. I looked at the fuel gauge. Quarter tank. I looked at the temperature. The digital display had stopped working, but frost was creeping across the dashboard. I looked at Thomas, if that was even his real name, sitting there with his impossible stillness and his dead eyes. And I made a choice. I put the truck in gear and drove. The next hour was the longest of my life. Thomas sat silent beside me, growing more translucent as we pushed north. I could see through his hand to the armrest beneath. The figures on the road appeared and disappeared, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, always watching. The cold was excruciating, like needles in my lungs with every breath. When we finally reached the Pickle Lake turnoff, Thomas pointed to a narrow access road. There, that's where it happened. The ice road. I turned onto it, following his directions down to where the road met a frozen lake. In my headlights, I could see the dark patch where the ice had broken through years ago, where Thomas had died. Thank you, he said. And his voice sounded almost human now, almost sad. You can go now. He opened the door and stepped out into the night. For a moment, I saw him clearly. Not as he'd looked in my cab, but as he must have looked when he died. Terrified, desperate, alone. Then he walked toward the broken ice and vanished. The cold lifted instantly. The heater roared back to life. The frost on the windshield melted away in seconds. I turned that truck around and drove back to Thunder Bay without stopping. I called in sick for the next 2 weeks. Eventually, I went back to work. Bills don't pay themselves. But I never took the Pickle Lake route again. Last month, a buddy of mine mentioned he'd picked up a hitchhiker on Highway 599. Said the guy was weird, didn't seem bothered by the cold, and asked a lot of strange questions. Asked if my buddy was heading north. I told him about Thomas, about the ice road and the broken patch on the lake. He laughed it off, said I'd been driving too long, that the isolation was getting to me. But 2 nights ago, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. Still driving north? I checked the registry at the Thunder Bay Library. Found an article from February 2020. A trucker named Thomas Whitmore had gone missing on Highway 599. Last seen heading to Pickle Lake. His truck was found 3 days later, broken through the ice on an access road. His body was never recovered. The thing is, I looked at the date of his disappearance. February 14th, 2020. Picked him up on February 14th, 2023. Exactly 3 years later. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what's out there on those northern highways. If you're ever driving through northern Ontario in winter, and you see someone standing by the road, don't stop, no matter how much your conscience tells you to. Because some people aren't looking for help. They're looking for a way home, and they'll take you with them if you let them. I'm a software developer, 28 years old, single, living alone in a converted loft apartment in Portland. I'm telling you this, because what happened to me could happen to anyone. I'm not superstitious. I don't believe in ghosts, but I can't explain what I experienced 3 months ago, and it's changed the way I sleep at night. It started in late July. I'd just moved into this place, a renovated warehouse building from the 1920s, converted into modern apartments. High ceilings, exposed brick, those industrial-style windows. My unit was on the 3rd floor, corner apartment. The rent was almost too good for the square footage, but the landlord explained that the building had been empty for years before renovation. Some bankruptcy thing with the previous owner? Made sense to me. The first 2 weeks were normal. I set up my desk near the windows, arranged my furniture, got into a routine. I work from home most days, so I'm in that apartment a lot. Morning coffee at 6, work until noon, lunch, more work, gym at 5, dinner, maybe some gaming or Netflix, bed by 11. Pretty standard. The sound started small. I'd be working, focused on code, and I'd hear this faint scratching, like fingernails on fabric, or maybe a mouse in the walls. Old buildings have mice, I know that. I made a mental note to get traps, but I kept forgetting. The scratching was so irregular, sometimes days between occurrences, that it never felt urgent. Then one night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up needing water. My apartment was dark, except for the streetlight glow through the windows. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass, and as I stood there drinking, I heard it. Breathing, not mine, someone else's. Slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere inside the walls behind my sink. I froze, glass halfway to my lips, listening. It continued for maybe 10 seconds. Steady inhales and exhales, wet sounding, like someone with a cold. Then it stopped. I stood there for 5 full minutes, heart hammering, telling myself it was the pipes. Old buildings make weird sounds. Water pressure, air in the radiators, expansion and contraction. I'm a logical person. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. The next day, I mentioned it to my neighbor across the hall, Marcus, a graphic designer in his 40s, friendly guy. We were checking our mail in the lobby. "Hey, do you ever hear weird sounds at night?" I asked, trying to sound casual, like breathing or scratching. Marcus looked at me for a second longer than felt comfortable. "Where's your unit again?" 3C, corner apartment. Something changed in his expression. "I haven't heard anything," he said, "but I'm on the other side of the building." He grabbed his mail and headed for the stairs, then paused. "You might want to talk to maintenance about the vents. Airflow can make strange noises." His tone suggested he wanted to say more but didn't. I called maintenance the next day. A guy named Tim came up, checked the vents, looked at the walls, found nothing wrong. "Solid work," he said, knocking on the brick. "They don't make them like this anymore." He seemed eager to leave. That night I stayed up intentionally, sitting in my living room with all the lights off, listening. Midnight came and went. Nothing. I felt stupid, an adult man sitting in the dark, hunting for imaginary sounds. Then at 1:47 a.m., I remember the exact time because I checked my phone. I heard it again, breathing. But this time it wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from inside my bedroom wall, the wall my bed was pushed against. I walked slowly to my bedroom doorway and stood there listening. It was clearer now, more distinct. Deep breaths, in and out, with this horrible wet quality, like someone breathing through fluid. And beneath it, something else, a faint scratching, rhythmic, like fingers tapping. I turned on every light in my apartment. The sounds stopped immediately. I didn't sleep in my bed that night. I stayed on the couch, TV on low, waiting for morning. Over the next week, it got worse. The breathing happened every night, always between midnight and 3 a.m. Always from the walls, but different locations. Sometimes the bedroom, sometimes the bathroom. Once from the wall behind my desk while I was working late. I started recording on my phone, but playback revealed only silence. Whatever it was didn't register electronically. I stopped telling people. I knew how it sounded. But then came the night that broke me. It was a Tuesday, August 15th. I'd barely slept in days. I was exhausted, mentally drained, questioning my own sanity. I decided to do something drastic. I'd sleep in the middle of my living room, away from all walls. I dragged my mattress off the bed frame, pulled it into the center of the apartment, surrounded myself with lights, and lay down with my phone recording beside me. I must have drifted off around midnight. I woke to the sound of breathing directly above my face. My eyes snapped open. The ceiling was maybe 8 feet high, exposed ductwork and beams, and in the darkness between the beams, something was pressed against the ceiling, directly over me. I couldn't see details. The shape was wrong, too flat, too spread out, like someone had been compressed and stuck there. But I could see it moving, expanding and contracting with each breath. And it was looking at me. I don't know how I knew that. I couldn't see eyes or a face, but I felt its attention like weight on my chest. We stared at each other for what felt like hours but was probably seconds. Then I screamed, this raw animal sound I didn't know I could make, and scrambled backward off the mattress. Every light in my apartment went out simultaneously. The breathing grew louder, faster, excited. I heard movement in the darkness, something sliding across the ceiling toward me. I ran blindly for the door, slammed into my desk, felt my way along the wall, found the doorknob, yanked it open and fell into the lit hallway. I sat there on the carpet gasping, while my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen opened her door and asked if I was all right. "I'm fine," I lied. "I'm sorry. Nightmare." She looked at my apartment door with an expression I couldn't read. "You live in 3C?" I nodded. "My husband and I used to live there," she said quietly. 20 years ago, before we switched to a smaller unit. We only lasted 3 months. She started to close her door, then paused. The building manager knows. They all know. They just don't talk about it. Know what? I asked, but she'd already shut her door. I spent that night in a hotel. The next day, I broke my lease and moved out. Cost me 3 months' rent as penalty, but I didn't care. I left most of my furniture. Couldn't bear the thought of going back for it. Here's the thing that still keeps me up at night, though. Last week, I was going through boxes from the move and found a flash drive I didn't recognize. I plugged it in. It contained a single video file, timestamp from August 15th, 2:37 a.m. The video showed my apartment, filmed from the ceiling, looking straight down at me, sleeping on the mattress in the center of the room. The camera angle slowly descended throughout the 10-minute video, getting closer to my face. At the very end, right before I woke up screaming, the video went dark, but the audio continued for another 30 seconds. And in that audio, you can hear breathing. 2 sets. Mine, rapid and panicked, and something else, slow and wet, that whispers one word just before the file ends. Stay. I've never told anyone about that video. I deleted it, threw away the flash drive, and tried to forget. But sometimes, late at night in my new apartment, I'll be almost asleep and feel that weight on my chest again. That sensation of being watched from above. And I'll lie there, frozen, too terrified to open my eyes and look at the ceiling. Because part of me knows it followed me here. Part of me knows it's still waiting. I'm a night shift nurse at a regional hospital in Ohio. I've worked the graveyard shift for 6 years now, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 4 nights a week. I'm used to being awake when the rest of the world sleeps. I'm used to quiet, empty streets and that particular kind of silence that exists only in the dead of night. But what happened last October changed the way I think about those hours. My name is Sarah. I'm 32, divorced, no kids. I live alone in a small ranch house on the outskirts of town, about 15 minutes from the hospital. It's a quiet neighborhood, mostly older couples, retired folks, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Safe, boring, even. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that I'm not someone who scares easily. I've seen death. I've held people's hands as they took their last breath. I've walked through empty hospital corridors at 3 in the morning without a second thought. Fear isn't part of my vocabulary, or it wasn't. It started on October 7th, a Saturday night. I'd just finished my shift and was driving home exhausted. It had been a rough night. We'd lost a patient, an elderly man with pneumonia. These things happen, but they never get easier. I pulled into my driveway around 7:30 a.m., grabbed my bag, and walked inside. My phone was on the kitchen counter where I'd left it, charging. I don't take it to work. Hospital policy. So I'd been without it for 8 hours. When I picked it up, I had 1 missed call. AM exactly. No caller ID, just unknown number, and a voicemail. I almost deleted it without listening. Spam calls, robocalls, wrong numbers, they're constant. But something made me tap play. Maybe curiosity, maybe exhaustion making me less cautious than usual. The voicemail was 90 seconds of silence. Not quite silence, actually. There was background noise, a faint static like an old radio between stations, and breathing, soft, steady breathing, like someone was holding the phone close to their mouth but not speaking. Then, right at the end, a voice, male, barely a whisper. I can see your house. The call ended. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling cold spread through my chest. Wrong number, I told myself. Some kid playing a prank. But I walked to my front window and looked out at my street anyway. Empty. Just parked cars and autumn leaves skittering across the pavement. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. That voice kept replaying in my head. Eventually I got up around noon, made coffee, tried to shake it off. Prank call. Nothing more. But that night, before leaving for work, I checked my phone. Another missed call. 3:00 a.m. again, from the night before. I must have missed seeing it the first time. Another voicemail. This one was 2 minutes long, the same static, the same breathing. But this time, the voice at the end said, "You left your bedroom light on last night. You couldn't sleep, could you?" My stomach dropped. That was true. I had left my bedroom light on. I'd been too unsettled to sleep in the dark. But that could be a guess, right? A coincidence? I saved both voicemails and went to work. During my break, I called the police non-emergency line. The dispatcher was polite but unhelpful. Unknown caller, no direct threat, nothing they could do. She suggested I block unknown numbers and change my voicemail password. I did both. That night, technically early, Monday morning, I got home at 7:30 a.m. and immediately checked my phone. Another missed call. 3 a.m. another voicemail, but I'd blocked unknown numbers. How was this getting through? I didn't want to listen to it. I sat at my kitchen table for 20 minutes, staring at my phone before I finally played it. 3 minutes this time. The static was louder, more pronounced. The breathing was heavier, excited. And the voice, when it came, was clearer. More confident. "You called the police. That was smart, Sarah, but they can't help you. I'm not making threats. I'm just watching. I've been watching for weeks now. I know your schedule. 4 nights a week, 11 to 7. I know you come home and shower before you try to sleep. I know you eat dinner at 10 p.m. before leaving for work. I know you're alone." Then, after a pause, "I know you're listening to this right now, sitting at your kitchen table, wearing your blue scrubs." I looked down. Blue scrubs. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. I ran to every window, checked every lock, drew every curtain. My hands were shaking. This wasn't a prank. Someone was watching me. Someone knew my routine, my schedule, where I lived. I called the police again. This time I insisted they send an officer. A young cop named Martinez showed up 30 minutes later. He was professional, took my statement, listened to the voicemails. He walked around my property, checked the windows, found nothing. "These are definitely concerning," he said, meaning the voicemails. "But there's no evidence of stalking or trespassing. No one's threatened you directly. We can increase patrols in your neighborhood, and I'd recommend installing security cameras." He said my name, I told him. He described what I'm wearing right now. Martinez looked uncomfortable. "Your name could be from social media, mail, anywhere. The clothes—" He gestured at my driveway. "He could be watching right now, calling from nearby." That thought hadn't occurred to me. I looked out at the street, suddenly feeling exposed even inside my own home. Martinez gave me his card and left. I installed a security camera that afternoon, one of those doorbell cameras that records motion. Then I called my sister in Columbus and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. "What's wrong?" she asked. I couldn't explain it. It sounded crazy even to me. "Just need a change of scenery," I lied. But I couldn't leave my house unguarded. And part of me, the stubborn part, refused to be driven out by some faceless voice on the phone. So I stayed. That night, I left for work at my usual time. During my shift, I checked my security camera app obsessively. Nothing. No movement, no visitors. My house sat quiet and empty under the streetlights. I drove home Tuesday morning, exhausted and wired with anxiety. Pulled into my driveway. Checked my phone, missed call. 3 a.m. voicemail, 4 minutes long. I sat in my car and played it, static, breathing. Then, "I saw the camera, Sarah. That's okay. I don't need to come to your door. I'm already inside." My blood turned to ice. "Check your bedroom. Check your closet. I left you something to remember me by." The voicemail ended. I called Martinez immediately, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. He and another officer met me at my house 15 minutes later. They searched everywhere. Every room, every closet, under beds, the attic, the basement. Nothing. "There's no sign of forced entry," Martinez said. "All your locks are intact. Windows are secure." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I snapped. Then the other officer called from my bedroom. "Martinez, you should see this." We went in. My closet door was open. I never left it open. And on the top shelf, where I kept extra blankets, was a Polaroid photograph. The photo showed me sleeping in my bed, taken from the doorway of my bedroom, looking in. The timestamp in the corner read 3 a.m. 3 days ago. The first night I'd received a voicemail. Martinez's face went pale. "Pack a bag," he said quietly. "Don't stay here tonight." They dusted for prints, found nothing. Checked the photo, no usable forensic evidence. The Polaroid camera was untraceable, bought with cash from any of 100 stores. They installed better locks, took statements, opened an official investigation. I moved in with my sister that afternoon. Here's what keeps me awake at night, though. Here's the part I haven't told the police because they'll think I'm losing my mind. Last week, I was at my sister's house in Columbus, 2 hours away from my old place. I'd transferred to a hospital there. Different shift, different schedule. I'd changed my number, deleted all my social media, cut ties with that entire part of my life. I was finally starting to feel safe again. Then, at 3:00 a.m. last Thursday, my new phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. In the morning, with my sister sitting next to me for support, I played it. 5 minutes of static. Heavy breathing. Then that voice, pleased and patient. Hello, Sarah. I like your sister's house. The yellow one on Maple Street, right? With the oak tree in the front yard? I can see it from here. I can see your car in the driveway. You can run, but I'll always know where you are. Because you're not listening, Sarah. I'm not outside. I'm not following you. I'm in your head now. Every thought, every fear, every time you close your eyes, and at 3 a.m., when the world is dark and quiet, I'll call, and you'll always answer. The voicemail ended. I still get calls. Every night at 3 a.m. my phone rings. Unknown number. I don't listen to the voicemails anymore, but they're there, accumulating. 15 now, 20, more. Sometimes I lie awake before 3 a.m. watching my phone, waiting for it to ring. And when it does, I feel this horrible relief. Because the waiting is worse than the call itself. The police say it's harassment. Probably some sophisticated hacker or stalker. They're still investigating. But I know the truth. Somehow, some way. I let something into my life that night I listened to the first voicemail. And now it won't leave. It knows where I am. It's always watching. And every night at 3 a.m. it calls to remind me. I work in IT support for an insurance company in Minneapolis. Nothing exciting. I fix computers, reset passwords, update software, that kind of thing. The company occupies floors 12 through 15 of a downtown office building. I'm based on 14, in a cubicle farm with about 60 other people. My name is Tom. I'm 35, single, live with my cat in a studio apartment. I've worked here for 7 years. It's stable, predictable work. I know the building inside and out. Every conference room, every supply closet, every quirk of the elevator system. But I never used the east stairwell. Not until 2 months ago. The building has 2 stairwells, east and west. Most people use the west one because it's closer to the main elevator bank. The east stairwell is at the far end of the building, past the break room and the rarely used conference rooms. I'd walked past it thousands of times but never opened the door. Until August 19th. That day, I'd stayed late to finish imaging some new computers. Around 7 p.m., I needed to run something down to storage on floor 12. The west elevators were being serviced. There was a sign on them. And I didn't feel like waiting for the east elevators. So I decided to take the stairs. 2 flights down, easy. I pushed open the east stairwell door and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. The door sealed shut behind me, cutting off all sound from the office. The stairwell was concrete and metal, painted institutional beige, lit by fluorescent lights. Standard stuff. But the silence was absolute. No hum of ventilation, no distant voices, nothing. I started down the stairs. My footsteps echoed strangely, like the space was bigger than it should be. Between the 13th and 14th floors, I passed a landing with a small window. Through it, I could see the city outside, already getting dark. That's when I heard the footsteps above me. Someone else in the stairwell, coming down. The sound was clear, shoes on concrete, steady rhythm, maybe 2 flights up. I kept walking, expecting whoever it was to catch up or call out a greeting. We were probably the only 2 people using these stairs, but the footsteps maintained the same distance. Always 2 flights up, matching my pace exactly. When I sped up, they sped up. When I slowed down, they slowed down. I reached floor 12 and pushed through the door into the hallway, relieved to be out of that oppressive silence. I dropped off the equipment in storage, chatted briefly with the security guard making his rounds, then headed back. I should have taken the elevator, but I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a stairwell. Someone else had been walking down, that's all. Coincidence that we'd matched pace. I pushed open the door to the east stairwell and started climbing. Immediately, I heard footsteps below me. 2 flights down, same steady rhythm matching my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started again. They started again. Hello? I called out. My voice echoed weirdly, seeming to come from multiple directions. No response. Just footsteps. Always 2 flights below. Never getting closer or farther away. I climbed faster, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The footsteps below me accelerated too, maintaining that exact distance. My heart was pounding now, and not from exertion. Something was very wrong with this stairwell. I burst through the door onto floor 14, breathing hard. The familiar office corridor stretched out before me, fluorescent lights, cubicles, the soft hum of computers. Normal, real. I went back to my desk and tried to shake it off. Old building, weird acoustics, maybe the echo of my own footsteps bouncing around. I'd read about that. How sound can play tricks in enclosed spaces. But the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. During lunch, I walked down to the east stairwell and stood outside the door, looking at it. Just a regular door. Gray metal, a small window at eye level showing concrete stairs beyond. I opened it and stepped inside. Immediately, the silence wrapped around me like a blanket. I was on floor 14. I looked up the stairwell, then down. Empty in both directions. The lights stretched away above and below, landing after landing, seemingly forever. I knew this was a 15-floor building. I'd seen it from the outside, but looking up I couldn't see where the stairwell ended. It just kept going, flight after flight, into darkness. I walked up to floor 15, pushed open the door. The top floor was there, just like always. Executive offices, thick carpet, fancy lighting. Normal. I went back into the stairwell and looked up. The stairs continued past floor 15. More flights, more landings, leading up into shadows. That wasn't possible. I climbed past floor 15. The door there was marked 15 in faded paint, but the stairs kept going. I passed a landing marked 16, then 17. The lights started getting dimmer. The paint on the walls was older, peeling in places. 19. The numbers were hand-painted now, crude and uneven. My logical mind was screaming at me to stop, to go back down, but I kept climbing. I had to see where this led. 20. 21. The air was getting colder. My breath started fogging. At floor 22, I stopped. The landing here was different. Instead of a door leading to an office floor, there was just a solid concrete wall. And painted on that wall, in large dripping red letters, were the words, "Turn back." Below it, in smaller writing, "They're waiting below." I stood there, heart hammering, staring at those words. Then I heard it. Footsteps, multiple sets coming up from below. Not matching my pace this time. Running, getting closer, I bolted, ran down the stairs, past the numbered landings that shouldn't exist. 21, 20, 19. The footsteps behind me were getting louder, closer. Multiple people running hard, their breathing ragged and wet. I didn't look back. I just ran, down and down, past 18, 17, 16, until finally I saw the door marked 15. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It was locked. I yanked on it, panic flooding through me. The footsteps were right behind me now, just around the last turn. I could hear whispering, urgent and angry words I couldn't make out. I ran down to 14, grabbed that door. It opened. I fell through into the office corridor and slammed it shut behind me. Through the small window in the door, I could see the stairwell. Empty. Silent. Just concrete and fluorescent lights. But as I watched, a shadow passed across one of the landings above, then another, and another. Multiple figures, moving down toward the floor 14 door. I backed away and returned to my desk. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? But I started researching the building. Found old newspaper articles from 1987. There had been an accident during construction. 3 workers died in the east stairwell. Something about a collapsed scaffold, but the details were vague. The building was completed anyway. opened in 1988. I also found something else. A post on an obscure forum from 2019. Someone asking if anyone else had experienced spatial anomalies in the east stairwell of the building at my address. The post had no replies. I don't use that stairwell anymore. But here's what bothers me. Last week, the fire alarm went off. A drill, routine. Everyone had to evacuate using the stairs. Elevators shut down during fire alarms. Most people used the west stairwell. But a few people, including my manager, used the east one. My manager came down with a strange look on his face. "Did you use the east stairs?" he asked me. "No," I said. "West side. Why?" He shook his head. "Weird acoustics in there. Could have sworn I heard someone screaming on one of the upper floors. Probably just echoes." 3 days later, my manager didn't show up for work. Or the next day. Or the day after that. His wife reported him missing. The last place anyone saw him was leaving the office building after the fire drill. Police checked the security cameras. They show him entering the east stairwell on floor 14 during the evacuation. They don't show him leaving. They searched the stairwell top to bottom. Found nothing. No trace of him anywhere. But yesterday, I needed something from storage on 12. Without thinking, still distracted by worry about my manager, I pushed open the east stairwell door and started down. Between 13 and 12, I found something on the landing. My manager's ID badge. Just sitting there on the concrete, and written on the wall above it, in that same dripping red paint. He went up. Below that, "Don't follow." I grabbed the badge and got out, gave it to the police. They asked me why I went into that stairwell when I knew my manager had disappeared there. I didn't have a good answer. But now, every time I walk past that door, I hear footsteps on the other side. Sometimes going up, sometimes coming down. And yesterday, someone taped a piece of paper to the outside of the door. Handwritten, single sentence. "Tom, come find me. I'm on floor 47. Mark is my manager's name. There is no floor 47. The paper is still there. No one else seems to see it. And at night, when the office is empty and I'm working late, I hear my name being called from inside that stairwell. Mark's voice, distant and echoing, begging me to come find him. I haven't opened that door again. But I dream about climbing those stairs. Higher and higher, past floors that don't exist, following his voice into the darkness, and in the dreams, I always reach a door marked 47, and I always open it. And I always see what's waiting on the other side. I just can't remember what it is when I wake up. Only that I'm terrified. And that soon, I won't be able to resist the urge to climb those stairs for real. I drive for a rideshare company. Have been for 2 years now, ever since I got laid off from my sales job. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, and I like the freedom of setting my own hours. I'm 41, divorced, living in Phoenix. I usually work Friday and Saturday nights when the money's good. Bar crowd, airport runs, that sort of thing. I've had all kinds of passengers. Drunk college kids, business travelers, couples arguing, people crying after breakups. You see humanity at its rawest when you're a driver. But I've never had a passenger like the one I picked up 3 weeks ago. It was Saturday, November 2nd, just after 2 a.m. I'd been driving for about 6 hours and was thinking about calling it a night. Then my app pinged with a request. Pick up at a residential address in North Phoenix. Drop off at Sky Harbor Airport. 30-minute ride, decent fare. I accepted. The pickup location was a quiet neighborhood. Modest houses, mature trees, streetlights casting yellow pools on the pavement. I pulled up to the address and waited. The app said the passenger's name was Michael. After a minute, my phone chimed. "I'm here," the message read. I looked around. The street was empty. No one standing by the curb, no porch lights on at the house. "Where are you?" I texted back. "Behind you." I checked my rearview mirror. Nobody there. I turned around in my seat and looked through the rear window. Empty street. My phone chimed again. "Let me in." A chill ran down my spine. This felt wrong. I was about to cancel the ride when I heard the back door handle click. The door opened and someone slid into the back seat. I spun around. A man sat behind me, 30s maybe, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Average height, brown hair, pale skin. Completely unremarkable except for one thing. I hadn't seen him approach the car. Hadn't seen him at all until he was already inside. Airport, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. Yeah, I got it, I said, trying to shake off my unease. Sometimes passengers appear from between cars or from dark yards. No big deal. I started driving. The route to the airport took us through mostly empty streets at this hour. Occasional gas stations, closed businesses, traffic lights cycling through their patterns for nobody. My passenger sat perfectly still in the back seat, not looking at his phone, not looking out the window, just staring straight ahead at the back of my seat. I could see him in the rearview mirror, and something about his stillness bothered me. Most people fidget, check their phones, look around. He just sat there, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed forward. Early flight? I asked, trying to make conversation. No, he said. Nothing else. Just no. We drove in silence for another few minutes. I merged onto the highway, heading south toward the airport. Traffic was light, just a few trucks and the occasional car. The city lights stretched out around us, but they felt distant, isolated. Do you ever think about the people you drive? My passenger asked suddenly. I glanced at him in the mirror. What do you mean? After they leave your car, do you wonder what happens to them? Where they go? What they do? Not really, I said honestly. I just drive people. That's the job. He said. Then, after a pause, I think about you. My hands tightened on the wheel. Sorry? I've been thinking about you for weeks, he said, his voice still perfectly flat. Watching your patterns. Friday and Saturday nights, usually 6 to 8 hours. You pick up a lot of drunk people. You're patient with them. That's good. You're a good driver. My heart started pounding. Have you ridden with me before? No, he said. But I've been in your car. I looked at him in the mirror. He was smiling now, but it didn't reach his eyes. They were empty, like doll's eyes. I don't understand, I said. But I was already looking for a way to end this ride. There was an exit coming up. I could pull off, stop at a gas station, ask him to leave. 3 weeks ago, he said, you gave a ride to a woman named Jennifer. She was going home from a bar. You dropped her at an apartment complex on Camelback Road. Do you remember? I did remember. Young woman, mid-20s, a little tipsy but nice. She'd tipped well. Yeah, I remember. After you dropped her off, you drove away. But I didn't. I followed her inside. She lived alone, 3rd floor, apartment 312. She didn't lock her deadbolt. Just the handle lock. Easy to get through. Ice flooded my veins. What are you talking about? 2 weeks ago, you drove a college student named Brad to his dorm at ASU. After you left, I went inside. His roommate was gone for the weekend. Brad was studying for an exam. Headphones on. Never heard me come in. I jerked the wheel, taking the next exit too fast. My tires squealed. Get out of my car. Last week, he continued, his voice never changing tone. You drove an older man named Robert to a house in Scottsdale. His wife was visiting family. He was alone. I waited until you drove away, then I knocked on his door. He thought I was delivering food. I pulled into a Circle K parking lot and slammed the brakes. Get the fuck out of my car right now or I'm calling the police. I turned around to face him, phone in hand. The back seat was empty. No one there. The door was closed. No sound of it opening, no movement, nothing. Just empty leather seats and darkness beyond the windows. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. I unlocked my phone with shaking hands and turned on the dome light. Checked the back seat, the floor, everywhere. Nothing. No one. Then my phone chimed. A message in the rideshare app. You left before I reached my destination. That's unprofessional. Another message. But it's okay. I know where you live. Another. I've been in your apartment too. I sat there, paralyzed, as message after message came through. Your bedroom is on the left. You sleep on the right side of the bed. You keep your keys on the kitchen counter. You have a photo of your daughter on the nightstand. She's pretty. How old is she now? 16? I called 911, told them everything, about the passenger, the messages, the threats. They sent officers to my apartment. I gave them the ride details, the pickup address, everything. The pickup address was an empty lot. Had been for 5 years, they said. No house, no residence, nothing. The app showed the ride was canceled. By me. No passenger name, no messages in the system. Just a canceled ride, but my phone still had the messages. The police saw them, documented them, but there was no way to trace them. They came from within the rideshare app itself, from an account that didn't exist. I haven't driven since that night. I filed a police report, got a restraining order against a person I can't identify, installed cameras in my apartment. My daughter is staying with her mother until this is resolved. But here's what keeps me awake. 2 days after that ride, Jennifer, the woman I'd driven 3 weeks earlier, was found dead in her apartment. Then Brad, the college student. Then Robert, the older man. All within 10 days. All in the way he'd described. The police are investigating, but they don't have leads. No DNA, no witnesses, no connection between the victims except me. And every night, around 2 a.m., my phone pings with a rideshare request. The pickup location is always my address. The passenger name is always Michael, and the drop-off location is always a cemetery. Don't accept the rides, but the requests keep coming, and last night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find a message on my phone. I'm in your car again, waiting. Come down whenever you're ready. I looked out my window at the parking lot below. My car was running. Headlights on, wipers moving. Someone was sitting in the back seat. My name is David. I'm a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm in downtown Seattle. I'm 29, engaged to my high school sweetheart, Emily. We're getting married next spring. I work long hours, sometimes until 9 or 10 at night, especially during big cases. It's demanding work, but I'm good at it, and the pay is decent. I'm telling you this because what happened to me 4 weeks ago has made me question everything I thought I understood about reality. And I need to tell someone, even if they don't believe me. Our office is on the 18th floor of a building that shares a parking garage with 3 other office buildings. It's one of those massive concrete structures. 6 levels underground, fluorescent lights, security cameras in most areas, the usual setup. I park on level B4, where the monthly spots are cheaper. It's deep enough that cell service gets spotty, but I've never had problems. Seattle's a safe city. Downtown is busy, well lit, plenty of people around, until it isn't. This started on September 28th. I remember because it was a Thursday, and I'd stayed late working on discovery documents for a litigation case. Most of the office had cleared out by 7, but I kept working. Around 9:30 p.m., my eyes were burning from staring at my computer, so I decided to call it a night. I took the elevator down to the lobby, then crossed to the parking garage entrance. The building was quiet, just the hum of ventilation and my footsteps echoing on tile. I swiped my badge, entered the garage stairwell, and started down. The stairwell is concrete, industrial, with metal railings and those wire-reinforced windows in the doors at each level. As I descended, I heard another set of footsteps below me. Someone else heading down. Normal enough, but the footsteps stopped. I kept going, reached the B2 landing, and paused. Listened. Nothing. Maybe whoever it was had exited on B2 or B3. I continued down to B4. The door from the stairwell opens into a long concrete corridor that leads to the parking area. Fluorescent lights, exposed pipes on the ceiling, that distinctive underground parking smell, exhaust and damp concrete. My car was about 50 yards away, in spot 247. As I walked down the corridor, I noticed someone standing near the entrance to the parking area. A woman, facing away from me, completely still. She was wearing a long dark coat and had straight black hair down to her waist. She didn't move as I approached, didn't turn around, just stood there with her back to me. "Excuse me," I said, slowing down. "Are you okay?" She didn't respond. Didn't even twitch. I stopped about 10 feet away, suddenly uneasy. Something about her posture was wrong. Too rigid, too still, like a mannequin. "Miss," I said again. Very slowly, she began to turn toward me. I didn't wait to see her face. Some instinct, some primal warning system told me to move. I walked quickly past her, giving her a wide berth, and headed toward my car. My heart was pounding for no reason I could articulate. She was just a woman standing there, probably waiting for someone. Nothing sinister, but I didn't look back. I got to my car, unlocked it, slid inside, and locked the doors immediately. Then, feeling foolish, I glanced back toward the corridor entrance. She was gone. The area was empty. No woman, no movement, nothing. I sat there for a moment, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. She must have walked away while I wasn't looking. Simple explanation. I started my car and drove up the exit ramp, eager to get home. The next night, Friday, I stayed late again. Same routine. Worked until 9:30, took the elevator down, entered the parking garage stairwell, and again I heard footsteps below me. The same pattern. They stopped when I paused. This time, I called out, "Hello?" No response. Just silence and the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. I continued to B4, pushed open the stairwell door, and there she was again. The same woman, same dark coat, same position, standing with her back to me at the entrance to the parking area. My mouth went dry. This couldn't be the same person. The chances of someone standing in the exact same spot, in the exact same position, 2 nights in a row, were astronomical. "Hey," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. "Do you need help?" She didn't move, didn't acknowledge me at all. I should have turned around, should have gone back upstairs and called security. But logic told me this was just a weird coincidence. Maybe she worked in the building, had a similar schedule, was waiting for a ride. People have routines. I walked past her again, faster this time, not looking in her direction. Got to my car, got inside, locked the doors. When I checked the rear-view mirror, the corridor was empty again. She'd vanished. I drove home and told Emily about it. She listened, concerned, and suggested I park on a different level, or use the building's main parking entrance instead of the stairwell. "Sounds like someone who might need help," she said. "Or maybe someone homeless looking for shelter. Either way, if it makes you uncomfortable, avoid it." Good advice. Rational advice. But Monday night I stayed late again. And this time, I deliberately took the elevator all the way down to the parking garage instead of using the stairs. The elevator opened on B4, and I stepped out into the well-lit parking area. My car was 50 feet away. The corridor entrance where the woman had been standing was to my right, about 30 feet away, and there she was, standing in the exact same position. Back to me, motionless, but this time she was closer. She'd moved from the corridor entrance into the parking area proper. Now she was between me and my car. My skin went cold. This was impossible. She couldn't have known I'd take the elevator instead of the stairs. She couldn't have predicted where I'd emerge or when, unless she'd been waiting there for hours. "Okay," I said out loud, to myself more than her. "This is too weird." I pulled out my phone to call security. No signal. Too deep underground. I'd have to use the emergency call box near the elevator, or just leave and report it from upstairs. But as I turned back toward the elevator, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Coming toward me, I turned around. The woman was walking in my direction, still facing away from me, walking backward. Her head was perfectly still, hair swaying slightly, arms at her sides. She moved with this horrible, unnatural smoothness, gliding more than walking. "Stay away from me," I said, backing toward the elevator. She stopped. For 5 long seconds we both stood there, me backing away, her motionless again. Then she began to turn. This time I saw her face. It was my face, not similar, not just a resemblance. It was my exact face. My features, my eyes, my expression. But wrong. Empty. Like looking at a mask made from my own skin. And she was smiling. This wide, terrible smile that didn't reach her eyes. I ran. Not to the elevator. I didn't want to stand there waiting for it to arrive. I ran toward the exit ramp, the one cars use to drive out. It spirals up through all 6 levels, and I took it at a full sprint. My dress shoes slapping against concrete, my breath coming in panicked gasps. Behind me, I heard running footsteps. Fast. Getting closer. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran, up and up around the spiral curves, until I burst through the gate arm at street level and stumbled onto the sidewalk. A few pedestrians stared at me. A wild-eyed man in a suit, gasping for air. I turned and looked back at the garage entrance. Nothing emerged. No one followed me out. I took an Uber home. Left my car in the garage overnight. The next day I went back with Emily and building security during daylight hours. They checked the cameras. Here's what they found. Footage of me entering the stairwell, me in the corridor, me standing still and talking to empty air. Me backing away from nothing. Me running up the exit ramp alone. The woman wasn't on any of the cameras. But here's what they didn't tell me. What I only learned when I insisted on seeing the footage myself. In every frame where I was looking at her, there was something wrong with my reflection in the car windows behind me. It was smiling. I quit my job the next week, told them it was for personal reasons. Emily and I moved to a different apartment, across town. I don't park in underground garages anymore. I don't work late. I'm looking for a new career. Something with daylight hours, but sometimes, late at night, I'll catch my reflection in a window or a mirror, and for just a moment, I'll see it smiling at me when I'm not smiling at all. And I know that whatever I saw in that parking garage, whatever wore my face, it's still out there, waiting, watching, following me home. I was driving home from my mom's funeral. It was a 6-hour trip from Northern California back to Reno, and I'd left late because I couldn't stand another minute in that house full of relatives I barely knew. All of them saying the same empty things. I'm sorry for your loss. She's in a better place. Time heals everything. I just wanted to be alone. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I got on Highway 89, winding through the mountains. The road was familiar. I'd driven it dozens of times visiting my mom over the years. But it felt different that night. Heavier somehow. The trees pressed in close on both sides, and the darkness between them seemed absolute. About an hour in, the fog rolled in. It started as wisps crossing the road, thin enough to see through. But within minutes it got thicker, a solid gray wall that my headlights barely penetrated. I slowed to 40, then 30, leaning forward in my seat and squinting through the windshield. The yellow line was the only thing keeping me centered. I thought about pulling over, waiting it out. But there was nowhere safe to stop. The shoulder was narrow, and the drop-off on the right side was steep. So I kept going, creeping along, hands tight on the wheel. That's when I saw the brake lights. 2 red dots in the fog ahead, maybe 50 feet in front of me. Another car moving just as slowly as I was. I felt a small wave of relief. At least I wasn't alone out here. I kept my distance and followed, letting them lead the way through the worst of it. We drove like that for maybe 20 minutes. The fog never lifted. If anything, it got worse. I couldn't see the trees anymore. Couldn't see the road except for the small patch directly in front of me. Just those 2 red lights floating in the gray. Then they stopped. I hit my brakes, stopping about 20 feet behind them. I waited, expecting them to start moving again. Maybe they were checking their phone, or trying to get their bearings. But they just sat there, brake lights glowing. Not moving, I honked. Once lightly. No response. I waited another minute, then honked again, longer this time. Still nothing. I put my car in park and turned on my hazards, then stepped out. The cold hit me immediately, wet and biting. The fog was so thick I could barely see my own hood. I walked forward slowly, one hand trailing along the side of my car to keep my bearings. As I got closer to the other car, I could make out the shape of it. A sedan, dark blue or black, hard to tell in the fog. The engine was running. I could hear it idling, but the windows were dark. I couldn't see inside. I knocked on the driver's window. "Hey, you okay in there?" No answer. I knocked harder. "Hello?" Nothing. I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. The door opened with a soft click, and the interior light came on. The car was empty. No driver. No one in the passenger seat. No one in the back. Just an empty car, engine running, brake lights on, and the driver's seat was still warm. I stepped back, my heart starting to race. The fog seemed to press in closer, muffling everything. I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing and the idle of that empty car. I turned and ran back to my car, stumbling in the fog, my hands shaking as I reached for the door handle. I got in, locked the doors, and threw it in reverse. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I couldn't see anything. Just fog. Dense, impenetrable fog. I shifted back into drive and turned the wheel, trying to go around the sedan. But as I pulled past it, I saw something that made my blood freeze. There was another car ahead of it. Same make, same model, same dark color. Brake lights on, engine running, and another one beyond that. I counted 5 cars total, all identical, all empty, all lined up in the fog like they were waiting for something. I didn't think. I just floored it, swerving around them, my tires slipping on the wet pavement. The fog swallowed the cars behind me, and I focused on the road ahead, or what I hoped was the road. I couldn't see the lines anymore. Couldn't see anything except gray. My speedometer said 50, but it felt faster. The car shuddered over something, a bump maybe, or a pothole, and I eased off the gas, trying to regain control. That's when the radio turned on. I hadn't touched it. It had been off the entire drive, but now it was playing, loud and clear through the static. A woman's voice, calm and even, speaking in a monotone. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. I switched it off, but it came back on immediately. The same voice. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. I ripped the faceplate off the radio, wires sparking, and the voice stopped. The fog started to thin, slowly at first, then faster, like a curtain lifting. Within a minute, I could see the road again. The trees, the yellow line, everything was normal, clear. I was still on Highway 89, still heading toward Reno. I didn't stop. I drove straight through the night, white-knuckling the wheel, checking my mirrors every few seconds. I made it home just after 3 a.m. and sat in my driveway for an hour before I could bring myself to go inside. I told myself it was the grief, the stress, the exhaustion, my mind playing tricks after everything I'd been through. I almost believed it. But 2 days later, I got a call from the highway patrol. They said they'd found my car on Highway 89, abandoned in the fog with the engine running and the brake lights on. I told them that was impossible. I was home. My car was in my driveway. There was a long pause. Then the officer said, "Ma'am, we have your plates on record. The car we found is registered to you." I walked outside while he was still talking. My car was in the driveway. Same car. Same plates. But when I looked at the odometer, it had 287 more miles on it than it should have. And in the back seat, I found a jacket that wasn't mine. It was damp, cold, and it smelled like fog. I'm Amanda Reeves, and I used to be a beekeeper in Savannah, Georgia. Notice I said used to be. I'll never keep bees again. I'll never even go near honey. What I'm about to tell you is the God's honest truth, and I still have the scars to prove it. It started in April of last year. I had about 30 hives on my property, a small farm about 15 miles outside the city. I'd been keeping bees for almost 10 years. It was peaceful work, meditative almost. I loved the sound of them, the way they moved together like a single organism. My honey won awards at the county fair 3 years running. That spring, a biotech company called Verdant Solutions bought the property next to mine. They were developing some kind of pesticide, they said. Something revolutionary that would only target invasive species and leave native insects alone. They assured everyone in the area it was completely safe. They even had EPA approval. The facility went up fast, a sprawling complex of laboratories and greenhouses. By mid-April, they were operational. That's when my bees started acting strange. At first, it was subtle. They seemed more aggressive, buzzing louder than usual. When I opened the hives for inspection, they'd swarm around me more frantically, even though I was wearing my suit. But they were still producing honey, still following their usual patterns. So I didn't worry too much. Then the honey started changing. In late May, I extracted a batch and noticed it was darker than normal, almost amber with a slightly metallic smell. I tasted a tiny bit, just a drop, and immediately spit it out. It was bitter, chemical tasting. Wrong. I called the County Agriculture Extension Office, and they sent someone out to test it. The results came back inconclusive. Possible chemical contamination from an unknown source, the report said. They recommended I dump that batch and monitor the next one. I went to Verdant Solutions to ask about their pesticide. The facility manager, a woman named Dr. Patricia Hammond, was polite but dismissive. "Our product is completely safe for pollinators," she said. "We've done extensive testing. Whatever's affecting your bees, it's not coming from us." But I knew better. My property had been pristine for a decade. Nothing had changed except Verdant Solutions. In June, things got worse. I started finding dead bees. Hundreds of them at first, then thousands. They'd pile up at the entrance to the hives, their bodies twisted in unnatural positions. But here's the thing. They weren't dying from pesticide poisoning. When I looked closer, I saw that they were killing each other. The ground was littered with torn-off wings, separated abdomens, severed legs. It was a massacre. The surviving bees had changed. When I approached a hive, they'd go silent. Completely silent. Thousands of bees making no sound at all, just watching me through the mesh of my veil. Their movements became synchronized in a way I'd never seen before, like they were being controlled by a single intelligence. One evening in late June, I made the mistake of checking the hives after dark. I don't know what I was thinking. You never disturb bees at night, but I'd been hearing this low humming sound coming from the hives, a vibration that I could feel in my bones, and I needed to know what was happening. I took a flashlight and walked out to the closest hive. The humming grew louder as I approached. When I shone the light through the entrance, I saw them. The bees had built something inside, but it wasn't comb. It was geometric. Impossible angles and structures that hurt to look at, made from what looked like wax, but pulsed with a faint green light. And in the center of this structure, suspended in the air, was something else. At first, I thought it was a new queen, larger than the others, bloated and pale. But then it moved, and I saw it had too many legs, too many eyes. Its body segments were wrong, arranged in a pattern that made my stomach turn. I stumbled backward, and that's when the bees attacked. They poured out of the hive, not just dozens, but thousands, tens of thousands. They didn't sting me randomly like normal bees. They targeted specific points. My wrists, my ankles, the back of my neck where the suit had a small gap. It was coordinated, strategic. They were trying to bring me down. I ran for the house, bees covering every inch of me, their buzzing so loud I couldn't hear my own screaming. I made it inside and slammed the door, crushing hundreds of them. The survivors hurled themselves against the windows, the walls, trying to find a way in. I spent that night in my bathroom with towels stuffed under the door, listening to them trying to get inside. The humming never stopped. It was in my head, in my teeth, in my bones. At dawn, they finally left. I looked out the window and saw them returning to the hives, moving in perfect formation, like soldiers returning from battle. I called the police, animal control, the EPA. Everyone came out to investigate, but by the time they arrived, the bees were acting normal. The strange structures inside the hives were gone, replaced with ordinary comb. The officials tested everything and found nothing unusual. They thought I'd had a mental breakdown, maybe been affected by some kind of toxin. But I knew what I'd seen. I burned the hives that same day, all 30 of them. Poured gasoline over everything and lit it up. The fire burned for hours. The bees swarmed around me while I did it, but they didn't attack. They just watched, circling in that perfect formation. When the fire finally died down, I found something in the ashes of the largest hive. It was a piece of that geometric structure, about the size of my fist, still intact, still pulsing with that faint green light. I took it to a lab at the University of Georgia, demanded they analyze it. The results came back 2 weeks ago. The structure was made from a combination of beeswax, plant matter, and something else, something the lab couldn't identify. Unknown organic compound, possibly synthetic, the report said. Molecular structure suggests artificial origin. I confronted Dr. Hammond again, showed her the report. She went pale. That's not possible, she kept saying. Our pesticide couldn't do this. It couldn't make them. Build things. What was in that pesticide? I demanded. She wouldn't answer. Security escorted me off the property. A week later, Verdant Solutions shut down. No announcement, no explanation. They just packed up and left in the middle of the night. The facility sits empty now, windows dark, doors chained shut, but the bees are still there. I see them sometimes, flying in formations over the abandoned building. And at night, if you drive past the facility, you can still hear it. That low humming sound coming from somewhere inside. I've moved into Savannah, into a high-rise apartment where bees can't reach. But last week I found something on my balcony. A small piece of wax formed in that same geometric pattern, pulsing with that same green light. They know where I am. They remember what I did, and I don't think they've forgiven me. Sometimes I wonder if Dr. Hammond was telling the truth. Maybe their pesticide didn't make the bees build those structures. Maybe it just woke something up, something that had been waiting in the hive mind, dormant for millions of years, for the right chemical trigger. Maybe the bees were never really under our control at all. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm a freelance photographer specializing in abandoned places. Old hospitals, forgotten factories, derelict homes. I document them before they're demolished or reclaimed by nature. It's solitary work, sometimes eerie, but I've never believed in ghosts. I've spent nights in dozens of abandoned buildings, and the scariest thing I've ever encountered was a raccoon that changed last September. On the coast of Nova Scotia, I'd been researching isolated lighthouses along the maritime provinces when I found references to the Widow's Watch Lighthouse on Cape Breton Island, built in 1873, decommissioned in 1962, supposedly abandoned ever since. The few photos I could find online showed a weathered stone tower standing alone on a rocky promontory, waves crashing against the cliffs below. Perfect. Getting there required a 2-hour drive from Halifax, followed by a hike along an overgrown coastal trail. I set out early on a Friday morning in mid-September, my camera gear and camping equipment strapped to my back. The forecast called for fog rolling in that evening, which would make for atmospheric shots. The trail was harder than I expected, narrow, muddy, bordered by dense spruce forest on one side and steep drops to the ocean on the other. But when I finally emerged from the tree line around 4 p.m., the lighthouse took my breath away. It stood about 60 feet tall, white paint peeling in long strips, exposing gray stone underneath. The keeper's cottage attached to its base had collapsed on one side, its roof caved in, windows dark and empty. The whole structure seemed to lean slightly, as if the decades of Atlantic wind had pushed it toward the sea. I spent the golden hour taking exterior shots, working my way around the property. The ground was littered with broken glass, rusted metal, and chunks of concrete. A path of flat stones led to the lighthouse door, which hung open on one hinge. As the sun began to set, I decided to set up camp inside the keeper's cottage. The section with the intact roof would provide shelter, and I wanted to capture some night shots of the lighthouse interior with my long exposure equipment. The cottage was exactly what I expected. Rotted furniture, water-damaged walls covered in peeling wallpaper, animal droppings in the corners. I found a relatively dry spot near the old fireplace and rolled out my sleeping bag. By 7 p.m., full darkness had arrived, along with the promised fog. It rolled in from the ocean like something alive, thick and gray, swallowing everything beyond 20 feet. I set up my tripod in the lighthouse tower itself. The spiral staircase was still intact, though several steps were missing near the top. I didn't risk going all the way up. The platform where the light had been was exposed to the elements, clearly unsafe. But from the midway point, I could capture the view looking up through the broken windows where fog was seeping in. That's when I found the logbook. It was tucked into a rusted metal box on one of the steps, protected from the weather. The leather cover was mildewed but intact, and inside were handwritten entries. The last lighthouse keeper's log, apparently. I sat on the steps and flipped through it by flashlight, thinking it might have historical value. The entries started normal enough. Weather observations, ship sightings, maintenance notes. But as I read further, around October 1961, the tone changed. October 3rd, 1961. Something wrong with the fog tonight. Too thick. Heard voices in it. Mary says I'm working too hard. Maybe she's right. October 7th, 1961. The voices again. Calling my name. Went outside to check. Nobody there. Mary didn't hear them. She's worried. October 15th, 1961. Can't sleep. The voices come every night now. They sound like they're drowning. I shine the light out into the fog but see nothing. Mary wants to leave. I told her we can't abandon our post. October 23rd, 1961. Mary is gone. She took the boat this morning while I was checking the light. Left a note saying she can't stay here anymore. She heard them too. She was just too afraid to tell me. October 30th, 1961. They want inside. I keep all doors and windows locked. But the fog comes in anyway. It seeps through every crack. And the voices are clearer now. They're not drowning. They're calling for help. They think I can save them. The entries stopped there. I flipped through the remaining pages. All blank. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I checked my phone for reception. Nothing, as expected. I was completely alone out here. The rational part of my brain said this was just the paranoid writings of an isolated, overworked man. Lighthouse keepers sometimes went mad from the loneliness. But something about those entries unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. I decided to finish my shots and then sleep. In the morning, everything would seem less ominous. I was adjusting my camera settings when I heard it. A voice, distant and muffled, calling from somewhere outside. "Help! Please!" I froze. The voice came again, slightly clearer. A woman's voice. "Is anyone there? I need help." Every horror movie instinct told me to ignore it. But what if someone was actually hurt? A hiker who'd gotten lost on the trail? I grabbed my flashlight and went to the cottage door. The fog was so thick I could barely see 10 feet. It pressed against the building like something solid, moving in slow, rolling waves. "Hello?" I called out. "Where are you?" "Here. I'm here. Please help me." The voice seemed to come from the direction of the cliff. I stepped outside, my flashlight beam barely penetrating the gray murk. "Keep talking. I'll come to you. I'm so cold. The water. I can't." I moved toward the voice, careful of my footing on the rocky ground. The sound of waves crashing below seemed louder, closer. "Where are you exactly?" That's when I realized something was wrong. The voice wasn't getting any closer, and now that I was listening carefully, it sounded off. Flat. Like an old recording playing through a bad speaker. "Help me. Help me. Help me." The same phrase repeated. Same inflection. Like a loop. I stopped walking. I was very close to the cliff edge now. I could feel the empty space ahead of me. Could hear the ocean churning against the rocks far below. "Who are you?" I called out. The voice stopped. Silence. Just the waves and my own breathing. Then, from behind me, much closer. "Why did you stop?" I spun around. The fog had gotten thicker, if that was possible. I couldn't even see the lighthouse now, though I'd only walked maybe 30 feet from it. "I asked you a question." The voice was right next to my ear. I ran. Flashlight swinging wildly, I sprinted back toward where the lighthouse should be. My foot caught on something and I went down hard, my flashlight flying from my hand. I scrambled up, hands and knees scraping on stone and glass, and saw a shape in the fog ahead. The lighthouse. Thank God. I stumbled through the cottage door and slammed it shut behind me, pressing my back against it. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Rational thoughts tried to push through the panic. Maybe it was another photographer. Maybe someone playing a prank. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the building. And that voice again, but different now. Male. "You shouldn't have come here. This is our place. We've been waiting so long." I grabbed my sleeping bag and equipment and ran for the lighthouse tower, slamming that door too. The spiral stairs felt safer somehow, more defensible. I climbed to the midpoint and sat there in the dark, my phone's dim screen providing the only light. The footsteps continued outside for hours. Sometimes one set, sometimes many, overlapping. And the voices, men, women, children, all calling out. Some asking for help, some angry, some just repeating names over and over. I pulled out the logbook again and read the last entry by my phone's light. October 30th, 1961. They want inside. Below it, in different handwriting, messier, more frantic, were lines I'd missed before they got in. Mary was wrong to leave. You can't outrun the fog. It follows. It remembers. Every ship that crashed on these rocks, every sailor who drowned, they're all still here, and now I'll join them. If you're reading this, leave. Leave before the fog comes, before they learn your voice, before they can call to you the way they called to me. Don't listen. Don't answer. Don't help. The last line was underlined 3 times. Whatever you do, don't stay until dawn. I looked at my phone. 11:47 p.m. Sunrise wasn't until around 6:30 a.m., almost 7 hours. The voices outside had changed. They weren't calling for help anymore. They were calling my name. Sarah. Sarah Chen. "We know you're in there, Sarah." How did they know my name? Then I remembered. My car registration. My camera bag with my business cards. My credit card receipts from the gas station in the village. I'd left breadcrumbs. Or maybe they'd always known. Maybe the fog shows them things. I spent that night pressed against the cold stone wall of the lighthouse, listening to the voices outside shift and change. Sometimes they sounded like people I knew. My mother, my ex-boyfriend, my college roommate. Sometimes they were strangers. Sometimes they weren't human at all, just sounds shaped into words. Around 4 a.m., the fog started seeping into the lighthouse tower. I could see it curling through the broken windows above, drifting down the spiral stairs like water. I climbed higher, even though I knew the upper platform was dangerous. But the fog followed, always following. At 6:15 a.m., the first gray light of dawn appeared. The fog began to thin. The voices faded to whispers, then to nothing. By 6:30, when the sun finally broke over the horizon, everything was silent. I waited another hour before I moved. My body was stiff from cold and fear. Carefully, I descended the stairs and pushed open the lighthouse door. The morning was clear and bright. Birds were calling. The ocean sparkled blue and peaceful below the cliffs. My car was exactly where I'd left it, a 2-hour hike away. I packed my gear with shaking hands and started walking. I didn't look back at the lighthouse. I didn't take any more photos. I drove straight back to Halifax and spent the next week in my apartment, trying to convince myself it had been exhaustion, isolation, an overactive imagination fed by that logbook. Then I developed my photos. I'd taken dozens of shots inside the lighthouse tower before darkness fell. In every single one, standing in the background just at the edge of the frame, there are figures. Translucent, barely visible, but there. Men in old sailors' clothes, women in long dresses, children. And in the last photo I took, the one right after I found the logbook, there's a man standing on the stairs below me. He's holding the logbook open, pointing at it, his mouth open as if speaking, warning me. I've tried to find information about what happened to the last lighthouse keeper. Records show the station was decommissioned in 1962, but there's no mention of the keeper's name or what happened to him. It's like he was erased. Last week, I got a message from someone claiming to be a local historian. They said they'd seen my lighthouse photos online and wanted to know if I'd encountered anything unusual. They said 3 other photographers had visited the Widow's Watch in the past 20 years. All 3 mentioned hearing voices in the fog. 2 of them went back to the lighthouse. Neither returned. I blocked the historian's number. I deleted all my photos of that place except one, the image with the warning keeper. I keep it as a reminder. Some places are abandoned for a reason. Some places should stay forgotten. And I'll never photograph another lighthouse again. There's this river that runs through the outskirts of Timber Falls, Oregon, that my cousin Marcus and I used to fish religiously. We'd go there with our spinning rods, usually using artificial lures or salmon eggs, and we'd pull out some decent-sized rainbow trout. Those early fishing trips are actually what turned me into the hardcore angler I am today. The river wasn't particularly famous or anything, despite having a solid population of fish year-round. Most people in town avoided it because you had to park off this sketchy dirt road and then trek through about half a mile of dense forest just to reach the good fishing spots. But Marcus and I never minded the hike. In fact, we preferred it that way. The isolation made it feel like we had discovered our own secret paradise that nobody else cared about. Now, anyone who's serious about river fishing knows that the magic hours are either right before sunrise or just as the sun's going down. Most anglers prefer the morning session, getting out there before dawn breaks. But Marcus and I, we had this routine where we'd head out in the late afternoon and fish well into the night. It became our weekend ritual, our version of what other kids our age were probably doing at parties or hanging out at the mall. It was a Saturday evening in late October, and everything was going exactly as planned. We arrived at the river right as the sun was beginning its descent, and by the time we had our lines in the water, the forest around us was already getting dark. We had positioned ourselves on this flat section of riverbank where the current wasn't too strong, a spot we'd fished at least 50 times before. The setup was always the same. 2 folding chairs, a cooler with drinks and snacks, our tackle boxes spread out between us, and our rods propped up on forked sticks we'd jam into the soft earth. About 30 minutes into our session, something weird happened. Marcus got a bite, or at least he thought he did. His rod bent forward sharply, the tip almost touching the water. He grabbed it and started reeling, but whatever was on the other end wasn't fighting back. There was just this dead weight, heavy and unmoving. Marcus kept reeling anyway, grunting with the effort, and I stood up to help him if he needed it. When whatever it was finally broke the surface, both of us just froze. It wasn't a fish. It was a jacket, a thick, waterlogged winter jacket, the kind with a hood and multiple pockets. Marcus managed to drag it onto the riverbank, and we both just stared at it for a minute. The thing was soaked through, covered in river muck and algae, but that wasn't what bothered us. What bothered us was that it looked relatively new, not like something that had been in the water for months or years. The fabric wasn't torn or badly deteriorated. It just looked like someone had recently lost it in the river. Marcus made a joke about it being his lucky day, finding free clothes, but his voice had this nervous edge to it. I didn't laugh. Instead, I suggested we should probably pack up and leave. There was something unsettling about pulling that jacket out of the water, though I couldn't quite articulate why. Marcus disagreed, saying we'd just gotten there, and it was probably just some hiker who'd dropped their jacket upstream. He tossed it aside and we went back to fishing, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I kept glancing over at that jacket lying in a wet heap on the riverbank, and I kept thinking about how cold the water must be this time of year. Why would anyone be in that river wearing a winter jacket? And if they weren't in the river, how did the jacket end up there? About 15 minutes later, Marcus got another bite. This time when he reeled it in, it was a backpack. A full-sized hiking backpack, also soaked and covered in the same river grime. We pulled it onto the bank next to the jacket and just looked at each other. Marcus unzipped it with shaking hands. Inside was a water bottle, some soggy granola bars, a flashlight that no longer worked, and a wallet. I told Marcus not to open the wallet, that we should call the police or something, but he was already flipping it open. There was a driver's license inside, protected by a plastic sleeve. The photo showed a guy in his mid-20s with a beard and a friendly smile. His name was Trevor Addison. Marcus pulled out his phone, saying he was going to see if he could find anything about this person online. But I grabbed his arm and told him we needed to leave right now. That's when we heard it. A splashing sound coming from upstream, maybe 30 or 40 yards away from where we were. It was rhythmic, like someone walking through the shallow part of the river. Marcus and I both turned to look, squinting into the growing darkness. At first I couldn't see anything. The forest was dense and the light was fading fast. But then I saw movement. There was definitely someone in the river, moving slowly in our direction. They were walking against the current, which should have been difficult, but they were moving steadily, almost mechanically. As they got closer, I could make out more details. It was a man, and he was completely submerged up to his chest. He wasn't wearing a shirt, just jeans from what I could tell. And here's the thing that made my blood run cold. It was late October in Oregon. The water temperature couldn't have been more than 45 or 50 degrees. Nobody in their right mind would be walking through that river half naked unless something was seriously wrong. Marcus whispered my name, his voice tight with fear, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The man in the river hadn't noticed us yet, or if he had, he wasn't showing it. He just kept walking downstream in that same steady, unnatural pace. His arms hung at his sides, not moving, not trying to maintain balance, just hanging there like dead weight. I grabbed Marcus's shoulder and gestured toward our gear, silently telling him we needed to pack up immediately. But as we started moving, one of our folding chairs scraped against a rock, making a loud metallic screech that echoed through the forest. The man in the river stopped walking. His head slowly turned in our direction, and even though it was too dark to see his face clearly, I knew he was looking right at us. For several seconds, nobody moved. Marcus and I were frozen in place, and the man in the river just stood there, the current flowing around him. Then, without warning, he started moving toward us. Not walking anymore, but wading with purpose, pushing through the water with sudden urgency. That broke the spell. Marcus and I abandoned everything except our phones and started running back toward the trail. Behind us, I could hear splashing getting louder, getting closer. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. The man had climbed out of the river and was sprinting after us through the forest. And I mean sprinting. Moving faster than anyone should be able to move through dense undergrowth in near-complete darkness. We ran harder than I've ever run in my life, branches whipping at our faces, our feet catching on roots and rocks. I could hear Marcus's panicked breathing ahead of me. Could hear the crashing sounds of someone chasing us through the woods. The trail back to the car felt impossibly long, like we were running through a nightmare where the destination kept moving further away. At one point, I tripped and went down hard, scraping my hands on the rocky ground. Marcus grabbed my arm and hauled me back to my feet without stopping. Behind us, the crashing sounds had gotten quieter, but I didn't know if that meant our pursuer had given up or if he'd simply gotten better at navigating the dark forest. We finally made it to Marcus's truck and threw ourselves inside. He fumbled with the keys, nearly dropped them, then got the engine started. We peeled out of there, the truck's tires spinning on the dirt road before finally catching traction. Neither of us spoke during the 20-minute drive back to town. We were both breathing hard, both checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. When we finally pulled into a gas station, Marcus called the police. He told them everything: the jacket, the backpack, the wallet belonging to Trevor Addison, and the man who'd chased us. The dispatcher said they'd send someone to check it out and took down our information. 2 days later, a detective called Marcus back. They'd found our fishing gear right where we'd left it, along with the jacket and backpack. They confirmed the items belonged to Trevor Addison, a 26-year-old from Portland who'd been reported missing 3 weeks earlier. He'd told his roommate he was going on a solo camping trip near Timber Falls but never came back. They searched the river and the surrounding forest but didn't find a body. They also didn't find any evidence of the man who'd chased us. The detective asked if we'd be willing to come in and look at some photos, see if we could identify who we'd seen. We agreed, but when they showed us pictures of known criminals and persons of interest in the area, none of them matched. How could they? We'd barely seen the man's face in the darkness. Marcus and I haven't been back to that river since. Part of me wonders if we should have stayed and confronted whoever that was. Maybe gotten answers about what happened to Trevor Addison. But the rational part of my brain knows we did the right thing by running. There was something fundamentally wrong about that man in the river. Something that went beyond just strange behavior. The way he moved through the freezing water. The way he pursued us through the forest in complete darkness. It wasn't natural. Sometimes late at night, I think about Trevor Addison's smiling face in that driver's license photo, and I wonder what happened to him in those woods. And I wonder if that man in the river had anything to do with it. Marcus thinks the man we saw was Trevor himself, that something had happened to him that changed him into whatever we encountered. I don't like that theory. I don't like it at all. But I also don't have a better explanation. The detective told us they're keeping the case open, that they're still looking for Trevor Addison. But it's been months now, and I haven't heard anything new. Sometimes I'll search his name online, hoping to see an update that he's been found safe, but there's never anything. Just the same missing person report from October. Marcus has this idea that we should go back there, in broad daylight this time, and try to find answers. But I've told him absolutely not. Whatever's in those woods, whoever that man in the river was, I have no interest in ever encountering it again. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some places are better left alone. I'm writing this from a hotel room because I can't go back to that apartment. I don't care about losing my security deposit. I don't care about the lease I signed. Some things aren't worth the money you save. My name is Emma, I'm 27, and I work as a graphic designer. Last September, I was desperate to find a place. My roommate had gotten engaged and moved out with 2 weeks' notice, leaving me unable to afford our place alone. I was scrolling through rental listings every night, getting more anxious as October 1st approached. That's when I found the apartment on Maple Street, a 1-bedroom in a great neighborhood. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, big windows. The rent was $950 a month, at least $400 below market value for that area. The listing had only been up for 3 hours. I called immediately. A woman answered, older, with a tired-sounding voice. "Is the apartment still available?" I asked. "Yes, when can you see it?" "Today? Now?" There was a pause. The lease would start October 1st. "Is that acceptable?" "Perfect," I said. She gave me the address. I was there in 20 minutes. The building was a converted Victorian, split into 4 units. It sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees, their leaves just beginning to turn. The woman who answered the door was maybe 60, gray hair pulled back, wearing a cardigan despite the warm September afternoon. "I'm Mrs. Chen," she said. "I manage the property." "You're Emma?" She led me up to the second-floor unit. The apartment was beautiful, exactly as advertised. Sunlight poured through the windows. The bathroom was small but clean. The bedroom had a walk-in closet. "Why is it priced so low?" I asked. "Because I'm not an idiot." There had to be a catch. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted slightly. "The previous tenant left unexpectedly. We need it occupied quickly." "What happened to them?" "They broke their lease. October 15th last year." She walked to the window, looking out at the street. "And the tenant before that left around the same time. October seems to be difficult for some people." "Difficult how?" She turned to face me. "Have you ever noticed that some places have a feeling, not necessarily bad, just strong? This building is very old. 1887, things settle. Pipes make noise. The radiators clank when the heat comes on. Some people aren't comfortable with old buildings." It seemed reasonable. "I've lived in old apartments before." I told her I'd take it. "I'll need first and last month's rent," she said. "And I need to be clear about one thing. If you decide to leave before your lease ends, you forfeit everything. No exceptions. Do you understand?" I understood. I signed the lease that afternoon and moved in on October 1st. The first week was perfect. I loved the apartment. I loved the neighborhood. I'd wake up to sunlight, make coffee in my little kitchen, feel like I'd finally gotten my life together. The noises started on October 7th. I was lying in bed around 11 p.m., reading on my phone, when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate steps. They stopped right outside my apartment. I waited for a knock. Nothing came. The footsteps started again, moving away, down the stairs. I figured it was one of the other tenants. The building only had 4 units. Mine, 1 across the hall, and 2 on the first floor. I'd seen my neighbor across the hall once, a young guy who nodded but didn't speak. The footsteps came again the next night. Same time, same pattern. Walk up the stairs, stop at my door, walk back down. On the 3rd night, I opened my door as soon as I heard them. The hallway was empty. The stairwell light flickered, casting moving shadows, but there was no one there. "Hello?" I called out. The light went out completely. I stood in the darkness, hearing only my own breathing. Then, from the floor below, I heard a door close softly. I went back inside and locked my door. I told myself old buildings make noise. Footsteps are just wood settling, pipes expanding and contracting. But the footsteps continued every night, and they started coming earlier. 10:30 p.m., then 10 p.m., then 9:30. On October 12th, I mentioned it to the neighbor across the hall. I caught him leaving for work as I was getting my mail. "Do you hear footsteps at night?" I asked. His expression changed immediately. Something like fear crossed his face. "I wear earplugs," he said quickly. "You should too." He hurried past me, practically running down the stairs. That night, the footsteps came at 8 p.m. I was eating dinner when I heard them climbing the stairs. They stopped outside my door. This time, the doorknob turned. I dropped my fork, staring at the knob as it twisted slowly back and forth. My deadbolt was locked, but the knob kept turning, testing. "Who's there?" I shouted. The turning stopped. Footsteps retreated down the stairs. I called Mrs. Chen. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. Handwritten on yellowed paper, "Don't answer. Don't open the door. It will stop after October 31st. 3B was the unit across from me. My neighbor had left me a warning. I knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked harder. Finally, the door cracked open, chain still attached. "What do you mean it will stop?" I asked. "Just don't open your door at night. No matter what you hear. I've lived here 3 Octobers. It always stops on November 1st. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles underneath. "The people who leave are the ones who open the door. What's behind the door? I don't know. I've never opened it." He started to close the door, then stopped. "Mrs. Chen won't help you. She knows. She's always known. The rent is cheap because most people don't make it through October." He shut the door. I heard multiple locks clicking into place. That night, October 13th, the footsteps came at 7 p.m. They stopped outside my door. The doorknob didn't turn this time. Instead, I heard breathing. Heavy, wet breathing, right on the other side of the door. Then a voice. Quiet. Female. "Emma. Let me in. Emma." I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. "I'm so cold. Emma, please let me in." It was my voice. The thing outside my door was using my voice. "Emma, please. It's me. I forgot my keys. Let me in." I grabbed my phone and called 911. As I was talking to the dispatcher, explaining that someone was outside my apartment, the voice changed. It became deeper, masculine, angry. "You can't hide in there forever. You have to come out eventually." The police arrived 12 minutes later. I heard them in the stairwell talking to each other. One of them knocked on my door. "Ma'am, this is the police. We're here about your call." I looked through the peephole. 2 officers stood in the hallway, flashlights in hand. I opened the door. They searched the stairwell, the other floors, even checked the basement. Nothing. No one. "Old buildings make a lot of noise," one officer said. "Probably just the pipes." After they left, I found another note under my door. "They can't help you. Don't open the door. Only 17 more days. 3B." I tried to leave the next day. I packed a bag and reached for my door handle, but I couldn't make myself open it. The fear was paralyzing. What if it was waiting right outside? What if opening the door, even during the day, was the trigger? I called in sick to work. I ordered food delivery, asking them to leave it outside the door, waiting hours before I'd crack the door open to grab it. The footsteps came earlier each day. By October 20th, they started at 4 p.m. The voice came every night, cycling through different people. My mother, my best friend, my ex-boyfriend, always asking to be let in, always sounding so real, so desperate. On October 23rd, I heard something new, scratching, like fingernails on wood, dragging slowly down my door. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the scratching continued. I could hear it, feel it vibrating through the door, but there was nothing visible on the other side. That night, I seriously considered opening the door, just to end it, to know what was there. The not knowing was driving me insane. I texted my neighbor, "I can't do this anymore." His response came an hour later. 8 more days. You're stronger than the others. Don't give up now. October 27th. The scratching became pounding. Violent, rhythmic pounding that shook the door in its frame. I sat in my closet with headphones on, blasting music, crying. October 29th. The pounding stopped. Silence. Complete silence. That was somehow worse. October 30th, 11:59 p.m. I was lying in bed staring at my phone, watching the minutes count down to midnight. To October 31st. One more day. Then I heard the whisper, impossibly close, like someone was lying in bed next to me. "Tomorrow night, Emma. Tomorrow night you have to come out. You have to open the door. Everyone does on Halloween." I'm writing this from a Holiday Inn. I left at 3 a.m. on October 31st. I opened my door expecting something terrible, but the hallway was empty. I ran. I didn't grab my belongings, didn't lock the door behind me, just ran. Mrs. Chen called me this morning. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "You broke your lease, Emma. You forfeit your deposit. I'm sorry it didn't work out. We'll need the keys back. The new tenant moves in December 1st. We never rented in November. November is quiet." I looked up the building's history. In October 1887, a woman was murdered in my unit by her husband. He locked her in and kept her body for 3 weeks before anyone found them. They found him sitting outside her door, whispering to her, asking her to let him in. My neighbor texted me today, "You made it. Congratulations. Only 3 of us made it through October. See you next year." Next year? What does he mean, next year? Then I realized, the lease I signed was for 13 months. It ends November 1st. Next year, I have to go back in October. I'm a 29-year-old high school teacher named Marcus, and I need to tell someone what happened on October 19th. I've reported it to the police. They found nothing. My friends think I'm exaggerating, but I know what I saw, and I know those people are still out there. My girlfriend Rachel and I were visiting her parents in rural Pennsylvania. Small town, population maybe 3,000, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Rachel grew up there and always got nostalgic around autumn, so we'd made it a tradition to visit every October. Her mom mentioned the hayride on our second night there. "The Hendersons are doing their annual Halloween hayride this weekend," she said over dinner. "You two should go. It's actually pretty elaborate this year." Rachel got excited. "Oh my God. I used to go to those when I was a kid. It's so campy and fun. We have to go." I wasn't particularly interested in hayrides, but Rachel wanted to, so I agreed. Her dad gave us directions. Take Route 47 north about 8 miles. Look for the farm with the orange lights. We drove out Saturday evening around 7:30. The sun had set maybe 20 minutes earlier, leaving that deep blue twilight. Route 47 was a 2-lane country road, no streetlights, just dark woods on both sides and the occasional farmhouse set back from the road. "There," Rachel pointed. Orange lights lined a gravel driveway leading to a large barn. A wooden sign read, "Henderson Farm Haunted Hayride, $10. We pulled in. There were maybe a dozen cars in the makeshift parking area. Families mostly, some couples, a group of teenagers. A big tractor with a flatbed trailer attached sat near the barn, hay bales arranged on it for seating. A man in overalls and a straw hat was collecting money. "2 adults, I said, handing him a 20. He took the money without speaking, nodded, and gestured toward the trailer. His face was painted white with black circles around his eyes. Part of the act, I assumed. We climbed onto the trailer and sat on a hay bale near the back. There were maybe 20 people total. The teenagers were loud, laughing, clearly excited. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, sat with her parents near the front. The tractor engine started with a loud rumble, and we lurched forward. The trailer pulled away from the barn, heading down a dirt path that led into the woods behind the property. "This is going to be so cheesy," Rachel whispered, grinning. "I love it." The path wound through the trees. It was dark now, really dark, with only the tractor's headlights and occasional flickering lanterns hung from branches. Fake cobwebs stretched between trees. A skeleton dangled from a rope. Then the first scare happened. A guy in a zombie costume jumped out from behind a tree, groaning and reaching toward the trailer. The little girl screamed. Everyone laughed. The zombie shuffled back into the woods. We continued. More decorations. A witch stirring a cauldron. Green lights making her cackle look eerie. A scarecrow that suddenly stood up and waved its arms. Standard haunted hayride stuff. Rachel was enjoying herself, squeezing my hand whenever something jumped out. I was actually having fun too. It was silly, harmless, exactly what you'd expect. About 15 minutes in, we came to a small clearing. The tractor slowed down. In the middle of the clearing was a campfire, and around it sat 4 figures in dark robes, hoods covering their faces. "Oh, creepy," one of the teenagers said. The robed figures stood as we approached. They began chanting, nothing I could make out, just low rhythmic sounds. One of them held up what looked like an animal skull. The tractor stopped completely. The engine idled. That's when I noticed something odd. The driver, the man who'd taken our money, wasn't moving. He sat completely still, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. The robed figures began walking toward the trailer. Their chanting got louder. "This is a good one," Rachel whispered. But something felt wrong. The figures moved strangely, their steps uneven, jerky. As they got closer, I could see their robes were filthy, stained with what looked like mud, or something darker. One of them reached the trailer and grabbed the edge, pulling itself up. The hood fell back. It wasn't a mask. The face was wrong. The skin was gray and loose, hanging off the bones. One eye was milky white, the other just an empty socket. The mouth opened, showing broken, blackened teeth, and the smell that came from it. Rotting meat and something chemical made me gag. "Jesus Christ," I said, pulling Rachel back, but she was frozen, staring. We all were. The thing climbed onto the trailer. The other robed figures followed, 4 of them surrounding us. And now I could see they were all like the first one. Dead. Decaying. But moving. The little girl started crying. Her father stood up. "Hey, this isn't funny. You're scaring the kids." One of the figures grabbed him. Its hands, skeletal, skin peeling away, closed around his throat. The man choked, clawing at its arms. "Stop!" His wife screamed. "Stop it!" But the thing didn't stop. It squeezed. I heard something crack. The man's struggles became weaker. That's when everyone started panicking. People were screaming, trying to climb off the trailer. One of the teenagers jumped off the back, hitting the ground hard and running into the woods. I grabbed Rachel's hand. "We have to go. Now." The robed figures were pulling people down, dragging them toward the campfire. I saw one of them grab the little girl, lifting her by her arm as she shrieked. Her mother was fighting, hitting the thing, but it barely reacted. Rachel and I jumped off the trailer. I held on to her as we ran into the woods. Away from the clearing, away from the screams. Behind us, I could hear chaos, shouting, crying. Then, horribly, silence. We ran blind through the trees. Branches whipping our faces, roots trying to trip us. I had my phone out, using the flashlight to see. No signal. Of course, no signal. "Marcus, what were those things?" Rachel was sobbing, barely able to speak. "I don't know. Just keep running." We ran for maybe 10 minutes before we saw lights ahead. We crashed through the undergrowth and found ourselves on Route 47. We were at least 2 miles from Henderson Farm. A car was coming. I stepped into the road, waving my arms. The car, a pickup truck, screeched to a stop. An older man rolled down his window. "What the hell are you doing in the road?" "Please, you have to call 911, I gasped. "The hayride at Henderson Farm. Something happened. People are hurt. Dead. We need help." The man's expression changed. "Henderson Farm?" "Son, there's no Henderson Farm on Route 47. "Yes, there is. 8 miles back. We were just there." He shook his head slowly. The Henderson place burned down 6 years ago. Whole family died in the fire. It's been abandoned ever since. Rachel and I looked at each other. No, she said. No, we were just there. There were cars, people, a barn with orange lights. I've lived here 40 years, the man interrupted. I'm telling you that property is empty. Has been for years. Police keep it fenced off because kids like to go there and cause trouble. He drove us back. We directed him to where we'd turned in, where the orange lights had been, where the gravel driveway led to the barn. There was nothing, just an overgrown dirt road, a rusted chain across it with a no trespassing sign, and beyond that, darkness. In the distance, barely visible in the truck's headlights, I could see the burned-out shell of a barn. "Where's our car?" Rachel asked quietly. It wasn't there. The parking area where we'd left it, where a dozen other cars had been parked, was just an empty field of dead grass. The police came. We told them everything. They searched the woods with flashlights and dogs. They found nothing. No trailer, no tractor, no bodies. No evidence that anything had happened. They found our car the next morning, parked at a rest stop 15 miles away. The keys were in the ignition. There was a receipt on the dashboard from a gas station, dated October 19th, stamped 9:47 p.m. We'd gotten on that hayride at 7:45. According to the receipt, we'd bought gas at 9:47, but we'd been in those woods, running, for at least an hour after that. The police think we made it up or took drugs or something. Rachel's parents think we got lost and panicked, that our minds filled in the blanks with horror movie stuff. But I know what I saw. I know what grabbed that man's throat. I know what that little girl looked like when that thing carried her toward the fire. And here's what keeps me awake. 3 days ago, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It's the hayride. The trailer full of people. You can see me and Rachel sitting in the back, holding hands, smiling. The timestamp in the corner reads 10:19, 7:52 p.m. And standing behind us, just visible over my shoulder, is one of the robed figures. Its hood is down. That dead, decaying face is turned toward the camera. It's smiling. On the back of the photo, written in shaky handwriting, "Come back next October." The hayride runs every year. We're always looking for new passengers. I showed the photo to Rachel. She won't talk about it. She won't talk about any of it anymore. She's made me promise never to go back to her hometown. But I can't stop thinking about those other people. The families, the teenagers, the little girl. Where are they now? And why did Rachel and I make it out when no one else did? My name is Jennifer. I'm 32, married, and I have an 8-year-old daughter named Lily. What happened on Halloween night has destroyed my family, and I need to tell someone the truth about the house on Berkeley Lane. Every neighborhood has that one house, the one that gives out full-size candy bars instead of fun size. Kids talk about it at school, plan their routes around it, brag about how many times they can circle back before the homeowner catches on. In our neighborhood, that house belonged to Mr. Garrett. I'd lived on Berkeley Lane for 3 years and never met him. He kept to himself. The house was a large Victorian, well-maintained, with a perfectly manicured lawn. I'd seen him maybe twice, always from a distance. Tall, thin, probably in his 60s, wearing old-fashioned suits even when doing yard work. Last October, Lily came home from school buzzing with excitement. "Mom, Aiden said Mr. Garrett gives out full-size Snickers bars. Can we go there for Halloween?" "Of course, sweetie. We'll make sure it's on our route." My husband Tom thought it was funny. Remember being a kid? That one house was like hitting the jackpot. Halloween fell on a Thursday. We started trick-or-treating at 6:30 p.m. Lily was dressed as a witch, purple dress, pointed hat, the works. Our street was packed with families, the kind of safe, suburban Halloween experience everyone wants for their kids. We hit a dozen houses before reaching Mr. Garrett's place. His house stood out immediately. Every window glowed with warm orange light. Elaborate decorations covered the front yard. Tombstones, skeletons, a fog machine pumping mist across the lawn. A carved pumpkin sat on each step leading to the front door. "Wow," Lily breathed. "It's like a movie." There were 5 other kids on his front walk when we arrived. Mr. Garrett stood in the doorway, wearing a black suit and holding a large wicker basket. He was taller than I'd thought, with pale skin and dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Welcome, welcome," he said, his voice soft but carrying. "Happy Halloween," I watched as each child approached. He gave them a full-size candy bar and said something to each one that made them smile. When it was Lily's turn, she practically skipped up the steps. "Trick or treat." Mr. Garrett looked down at her, that strange smile on his face. "What a wonderful witch you are. Would you like to see inside? I have decorations that might interest you." Lily turned to look at me, her eyes pleading. Every parenting instinct I had screamed no. But Tom was standing right there with me. Other parents were around. The door was open. I could see into a well-lit foyer with framed paintings and a chandelier. "Just for a minute," Mr. Garrett said, looking at me now. "I have a Victorian morning room. Quite educational. You're welcome to come in as well." "Please, Mom?" Lily asked. I should have said no. God, I should have said no. "Okay, 1 minute. Tom and I will wait right here." Lily went inside. Mr. Garrett stepped back, leaving the door open. I could see her looking at something on the wall, pointing, asking questions I couldn't hear. Then, maybe 30 seconds later, Mr. Garrett stepped into the doorway. "I'm sorry, she's dropped her candy, just retrieving it from the parlor." He closed the door. I waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30. "Tom," I said, my voice tight. He was already moving toward the door. He knocked. "Lily? Time to go, honey." No answer. He knocked harder. "Mr. Garrett? We need our daughter to come out now." The door opened. Mr. Garrett stood there, looking confused. "I'm sorry? Your daughter? The little girl who just went inside," I said, my heart starting to pound. "The witch. Where is she?" "No one came inside," he said calmly. "I've been handing out candy at the door all evening." "That's impossible," Tom said, his voice rising. "We watched her walk in." "You invited her in." "Where is my daughter?" Mr. Garrett's expression didn't change. "Sir, I assure you, no children have entered my home. Perhaps she wandered to another house." Tom pushed past him into the foyer. I followed. The house was immaculate. Hardwood floors, antique furniture, that chandelier casting everything in golden light. Tom started calling Lily's name, checking rooms on the first floor. I ran upstairs, throwing open doors. Bedroom, bathroom, office, empty. Mr. Garrett followed us calmly. "I really must insist you leave. You're upsetting my evening." "Where is she?" I screamed at him. "What did you do with my daughter?" "I've done nothing. I don't know what you're talking about." We called 911. The police arrived within 8 minutes. They searched the house top to bottom. Basement, attic, crawl spaces. Nothing. Lily was gone. They questioned Mr. Garrett for hours. His story never changed. No children had entered his home. He'd been handing out candy at the door all evening. Several neighbors confirmed they'd seen him there, standing in the doorway, never leaving his post. But Tom and I both saw Lily go inside. We saw it. The police expanded the search. The entire neighborhood. Then the surrounding area. Amber Alert, news coverage, search parties. Lily's picture was everywhere. Days passed. Then weeks. No trace of her. Mr. Garrett cooperated fully with the investigation. They found nothing suspicious in his house, his background, his life. He was a retired history professor, widowed, no children, no criminal record, no red flags. I started watching his house. Every day, every night, sitting in my car, just watching. Tom begged me to stop, but I couldn't. I knew what I'd seen. 2 weeks after Halloween, I noticed something. Every evening at 8 p.m., Mr. Garrett would leave his house and walk to the end of the street, carrying a small bag. He'd be gone for exactly 20 minutes, then return. On the 15th night, I followed him. He walked 6 blocks to an old church, long abandoned. The windows were boarded up, the parking lot cracked and overgrown. He went around to the back, where a basement entrance stood half hidden by bushes. He unlocked it and went inside. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. The door was unlocked. Stone steps led down into darkness. I used my phone's flashlight. The basement was massive, stretching under the entire church. Old pews were stacked against walls. Boxes of hymnals. Religious statues covered in dust. And in the far corner, behind a rotted confessional booth, was a door. A new door. Heavy wood with a modern lock. I heard voices beyond it. Children's voices, singing. "Lily?" I whispered. The singing stopped. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. I pounded on it. Lily! Lily! Footsteps behind me. I spun around. Mr. Garrett stood at the bottom of the stairs, backlit by the entrance. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. My daughter is behind that door. Let her out, now, he walked toward me slowly. Your daughter went somewhere else, somewhere better. They all do. They? How many children have you taken? I don't take them. They choose to stay. Every year, on Halloween, when the veil is thinnest, the door opens. They see what's on the other side, and they choose. You're insane. Open the door or I'm calling the police. Call them. They won't find anything. They never do. I called 911. I screamed our location into the phone. Mr. Garrett just stood there, watching me with those dark, empty eyes. The police came. They broke down the door. Behind it was a small room. Empty. Stone walls. Dirt floor. No other exits, no children. No, Lily. She was here. I sobbed. I heard her singing. I heard children. The police found nothing. The church basement was empty except for old junk. There was no evidence anyone had been there recently. No forensics. No traces. Nothing. Mr. Garrett was arrested but released 18 hours later. No evidence. No probable cause. Tom and I divorced 3 months later. He couldn't handle it. He needed to believe Lily had been kidnapped by someone, somewhere else, that we'd someday find her. He couldn't accept what I knew to be true. It's been almost a year now. Halloween is in 3 days. Yesterday I received a package. No return address. Inside was Lily's witch hat and a photograph. The photo shows 6 children standing in a room I don't recognize. The walls are covered in symbols I don't understand. The children are holding hands in a circle. They're all wearing their Halloween costumes from last year. Lily is there, in her purple witch dress, smiling. Behind them, barely visible in the shadow, is a tall figure in a black suit. On the back of the photo, in handwriting I recognize as Lily's. I'm okay, Mommy. It's beautiful here. Don't be sad. We're having the best Halloween ever. Mr. Garrett was right. We all chose to stay. I'm going back to that church tomorrow night. Halloween night. If the veil is thinnest, if the door opens, I'm going through. I don't care what's on the other side. I'm bringing my daughter home, or I'm staying there with her. My name is Casey. I'm 26, and I need to tell you what happened in Blackwood Forest last October. 4 of us went in, 3 of us came out, and I still don't know who or what we left behind. Every October since college, my friend group has done a camping trip. Me, Jordan, Sam, and Nicole. We'd been doing it for 5 years. Always the 3rd weekend of October. It was tradition, bonfire, ghost stories, too much beer, terrible sing-alongs. Nothing serious. Just friends having fun. Last year we picked Blackwood Forest. None of us had been there before. Sam found it online, a state forest about 2 hours from the city. There's a campground with fire pits, she said. Perfect for what we do. We drove up Friday afternoon, October 18th. The forest was dense, mostly pine and oak, with hiking trails cutting through. The campground was small, maybe 10 sites, only 2 other groups there. We set up our tents, gathered wood, got the fire going as the sun set. By 9 p.m. we were sitting around the flames, drinking, laughing. Jordan was telling a story about his nightmare boss. Nicole was on her phone, trying to get signal. Sam was roasting a marshmallow. That's when we saw the figure. Just beyond the firelight, maybe 20 feet into the trees, someone was standing there, watching us. Hey, Jordan called out. You need something? The figure didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there, barely visible in the darkness. Maybe they're lost, Nicole said quietly. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the trees. The beam caught someone. A guy, maybe our age, wearing a hoodie and jeans. He stood completely still, hands at his sides, face shadowed by the hood. You okay? I called. Need help finding your campsite? He took a step forward, into the edge of the firelight. That's when I saw his face. It was wrong. I don't know how else to describe it. The features were all there. Eyes, nose, mouth. But they didn't quite line up right. Like looking at someone through water. Distorted. This is private, Jordan said. His voice harder now. You need to leave. The figure tilted his head, studying us. Then he smiled. That smile was the worst part. Too wide, too many teeth. I was invited, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. What? By who? Sam asked. By one of you. He looked at each of us in turn. Someone here asked me to come, so here I am. Nobody invited you, Nicole said. You need to go. He kept smiling. October bonfire, Blackwood Forest. 4 friends. That's what the invitation said. I'm here for the bonfire. We all looked at each other. None of us had invited anyone. This was our tradition. Just the 4 of us. Look, this is weird, I said. We don't know you. Please leave or we're calling the Rangers. He laughed then, a sound like grinding metal. I can't leave. I was invited. I have to stay until the bonfire ends. He walked closer, right to the edge of our sight. My name is Michael. I'm here to join your tradition. Jordan stood up. Dude, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny. Get lost. Michael sat down. Right there on a log at the edge of our circle like he belonged there. The firelight made his face look even stranger, shadows moving across it in ways that didn't match the flames. Should we call someone? Nicole whispered to me, but my phone had no signal. None of ours did. We were too deep in the forest. Michael stared into the fire. Tell me a story, he said. That's what you do, right? Every October. Sit around the fire and tell stories. How do you know that? Sam asked, her voice shaking. Because one of you told me. One of you invited me here and told me everything. His head swiveled toward us, that wrong smile fixed on his face. So, who wants to go first? Nobody spoke. The forest around us was completely silent. No crickets, no wind. Just the crackling of the fire and Michael's breathing, which sounded wet and labored. Jordan tried to be reasonable. Okay, Michael, let's say someone did invite you. Who was it? Just tell us who talked to you. Michael pointed directly at me. Casey did. What? No, I didn't, I said immediately. I've never seen you before in my life. Yes, you did. His eyes locked on mine. They were black. Completely black, no whites, no pupils, just solid black. 3 days ago, you were alone. You said you wanted someone new to join. Someone different. You called out for me. I felt sick. 3 days ago, October 15th, I'd been hiking alone, trying to clear my head after a bad day at work. I'd walked through a different part of these woods during a scouting trip, and I'd said something stupid, talking to myself like an idiot. I wish we had some new blood in the group. Same 4 people every year gets old. But I'd been alone. Completely alone. You heard me, I whispered. Michael nodded. I hear everyone who calls out here. Blackwood listens. And when you call, I come. Casey, what is he talking about? Nicole demanded. I was just talking to myself. I didn't mean, but you said it, Michael interrupted. You invited someone new, so here I am, and now I stay until the tradition is complete. What tradition? Jordan asked. Michael leaned forward. One person stays, every bonfire. One person always stays behind. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Sam stood up. Okay, this is insane. We're leaving. Right now. We packed quickly, throwing things into bags, taking down tents. Michael watched us the entire time, sitting by the fire, that smile never leaving his face. You can't leave until someone stays, he said. Those are the rules. There are no rules, Jordan snapped. You're just some creep. We got everything in the cars. All 4 of us got in. Jordan started the engine. We drove down the dirt road toward the exit. That's when Nicole screamed. Michael was in the back seat, between me and Sam. He hadn't been there 2 seconds ago. The car was moving, but he was there, sitting calmly, hands folded in his lap. Jordan slammed on the brakes. We all jumped out of the car, yelling, panicking. Michael stepped out slowly. Someone has to stay. That's the rule. You can't leave until someone agrees to stay. Fine, Nicole said suddenly. I'll stay. I'll stay for 5 minutes. Then I'm leaving, okay? Michael shook his head. No, you have to mean it. You have to choose to stay. We stood there in the dark road, the headlights illuminating Michael's impossible face. None of us knew what to do. Someone choose, Michael said. His voice was getting deeper, rougher. Or I choose for you. I'll stay, I said. This is my fault. I'll stay. Casey, no, Jordan started. It's fine. I'll stay for an hour. Then I'll hike out. I'll meet you at the ranger station. Michael's smile widened. Agreed. The others didn't want to leave me, but what choice did we have? This thing, whatever Michael was Wasn't going to let us go otherwise. They drove away. I watched the taillights disappear down the dark road. Michael and I walked back to the campsite. The fire was still burning, impossibly bright, though we hadn't added wood in over an hour. "Sit," Michael said. I sat. He sat across from me. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you stay. Until the fire goes out. Until dawn. Until the tradition is complete. Then what?" He leaned forward and his face began to change. The features shifted, rearranged, like clay being molded. And slowly, horribly, his face became mine. "Then I leave," he said in my voice. "And you stay. Forever." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, rooted to the spot, watching as Michael stood up in my body, wearing my face. "Thank you for inviting me, Casey," he said. "I've been waiting a long time for someone to call out." He walked into the darkness. I heard a car start. Jordan's car. My friends wouldn't know. They'd think it was me getting in. I'm still here, sitting by this fire that never goes out, waiting for next October, when 4 friends will come to Blackwood Forest for their annual bonfire, and one of them will invite me to join. If you're reading this, if you find this note, never speak wishes into Blackwood Forest. Never call out for something new or different, because something is listening, and it will come when you call. My name is Rebecca. I'm 35, and I'm a single mother to a 6-year-old girl named Lily. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what's happening in my house every October. I need someone to believe me, because the police won't, my family won't, and I'm running out of time. Lily started talking about Sarah 2 years ago, in October 2023. She was 4 then, and I wasn't concerned. Imaginary friends are normal for kids that age. Lily would set an extra place at the table for Sarah, tell me what Sarah said, include her in games. "Sarah likes your painting," Lily would say while we did art projects. "That's nice, honey." "What does Sarah look like?" "She's bigger than me. She has long hair, and she's really, really old." "Old like Grandma?" Lily shook her head. "Older. She says she's been here a long time. It was cute, harmless. Until Halloween night we were carving pumpkins on our front porch. Lily was scooping out seeds, laughing, making a mess. She stopped suddenly, looking at the empty chair next to her. "What's wrong, Sarah?" she asked the air. I played along. "Is Sarah okay?" Lily's face went serious. "She says she has to go soon. She says she can only visit in October, and when October ends, she has to go back." "Back where?" "She won't say. She just says it's dark there." I felt a chill, but I brushed it off. Kids say creepy things sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. November 1st came. Lily stopped mentioning Sarah. I asked about her once, and Lily just shrugged. "She's gone. She'll come back next October." And she did. October 1st, 2024. Lily came downstairs for breakfast and said, "Sarah's back, Mom. She's sitting at the table." I looked at the empty chair. "That's great, sweetie. Tell Sarah I said good morning." "She can hear you." She says good morning too. The next few weeks were normal. Lily talked to Sarah, played with Sarah, drew pictures of Sarah, a tall figure with long black hair and a white dress, always standing in the background of Lily's crayon drawings. But then things started happening. October 12th. I was doing laundry when I heard Lily laughing upstairs. I went to check on her. She was in her room, sitting on her bed, facing the corner. "What are you doing, honey? Playing hide-and-seek with Sarah? She's really good at hiding." "Where is she?" Lily pointed at the corner. "Right there. Can't you see her?" I looked. Nothing. Just the corner of her room, shadows from the curtain moving across the wall. "I don't see her, Lily." My daughter's smile faded. She says you're not looking hard enough. She says if you look really hard, you'll see her. I stared at that corner. For a moment, just a split second, I thought I saw something. A shape, darker than the shadows should be, taller. But when I blinked, it was gone. October 17th. I woke up at 2 a.m. to Lily standing beside my bed. "Lily? What's wrong?" "Sarah wants to show you something." My heart was pounding. "Show me what?" "She wants you to come to my room." Sarah can wait until morning. Lily's expression didn't change. She says it has to be now. She says it's important. I got up, took Lily's hand, and walked to her room. The door was open. The nightlight cast a soft glow. What did Sarah want to show me? Lily pointed at her closet. She's in there. She wants you to see where she sleeps. Sarah sleeps in your closet? She doesn't sleep. She waits. She says during the day she waits in the dark places. I opened the closet door. Lily's clothes hung there. Toys on the floor. Nothing unusual. But the air coming from the closet was cold. Much colder than it should be. There's nothing here, Lily. Let's get you back to bed. She's disappointed, Lily whispered. She says you're not ready yet. October 23rd. I came home from work to find Lily sitting at the kitchen table having a tea party. 2 cups, 2 plates. One for her, one for the empty chair. Hi, Mom. Sarah and I are having tea. I put down my bag. That's nice. Did you have a good day at school? Sarah says we need to talk about something important. What's that? Lily's expression became very serious. Sarah says she's been here a long time. Since before you. Since before Grandma. She says this was her house first. This house was built in 1985, Lily. Sarah's not that old. Not this house. The ground. She says she was here when it was just trees and dirt. She says she's been waiting. Waiting for what? Lily looked at the empty chair, tilted her head like she was listening. She says she's been waiting for someone who can see her. Someone who can help her. Help her do what? She won't tell me. She says you're not ready yet. That night I heard voices. I woke up around 3 a.m. and heard Lily talking to someone. I crept to her door and listened. But my mom won't understand, Lily was saying. Silence. I don't want to leave her alone. She needs me. Silence. Okay, I'll try. But what if it doesn't work? Silence. Then Lily's voice, small and scared. Do I have to? I pushed open the door. Lily was sitting up in bed, looking at the corner where she always said Sarah stood. Who are you talking to? Sarah, she's teaching me things. What kind of things? How to see in the dark. How to move through walls. How to stay when October ends. My blood went cold. What do you mean, stay when October ends? Sarah says if I practice enough, I can be like her. I can stay here forever, even when October is over. I sat on her bed, trying to stay calm. Lily, Sarah isn't real. She's pretend. You know that, right? Lily looked at me with such sadness. Mom, Sarah is more real than anything. She's the realest thing I've ever met. And she says soon you'll see her too. October 28th. 3 days ago. That's when everything changed. I was making dinner when Lily came downstairs. Mom, Sarah wants to meet you. Really meet you. We can play pretend after dinner, sweetie. No, Mom, she says tonight. When it's dark. She says the veil is thin now, and you can see her if you really try. Lily, this has gone too far. Sarah isn't... She's standing behind you. I froze. I could feel it. Cold air on the back of my neck. The smell of something old and damp, like earth and decay. I turned around slowly. The kitchen was empty. But on the wall, in the shadows cast by the overhead light, I saw it. A silhouette. Tall, thin, with long hair. It didn't move with the light. It stayed perfectly still while everything else shifted and flickered. Do you see her now? Lily whispered. I did. God help me, I did. The shadow raised one arm, beckoning. I grabbed Lily and ran. We went to my sister's house. We've been here for 3 days. I called a priest. I called a medium. I called everyone I could think of. But Lily keeps saying the same thing. Sarah's waiting. She says we have to go home. She says she's been patient, but October is almost over, and we're running out of time. Time for what? I asked. For you to decide? Decide what? Lily looked at me with eyes that seemed too old, too knowing. Sarah says every October, someone has to choose. Either they see her and accept her, or she takes someone anyway. She says last year she took the old man who lived here before us. She says the year before she took the woman with the dog. Takes them where? To where she is. The dark place. The place she can't leave. Why is she doing this? She says she's lonely. She says she's been alone so long. She says if you choose to see her, really see her, then she'll leave. But if you don't, if I don't, Lily started crying. She says she'll take me instead. It's October 30th now. Tomorrow is Halloween. Tomorrow is the last day of October. And I have to make a choice. I'm going home tonight. I'm going to that house. And I'm going to face Sarah, whatever she is. Because I will not let that thing take my daughter. If you find this, if something happens to me, please know. I didn't abandon Lily. I didn't leave her. I went into that darkness willingly, so she could stay in the light. Sarah, if you can hear me, I see you. I acknowledge you, and I'm coming. Take me instead. My boyfriend Derek and I had been talking about doing a couple's camping trip for months. We'd done group camping before with friends, but never just the two of us. So last September we decided on the Daniel Boone National Forest in eastern Kentucky. We'd heard great things about the secluded spots near the cliffs overlooking the valley. The drive took about 3 hours from Nashville. When we pulled into the dusty parking area at the trailhead around 4 p.m., there was only one other vehicle there. A beat-up old Volkswagen van, the classic hippie style from the 70s, painted in faded blue and white. As we were unloading our gear from the trunk, two guys emerged from the trail. Both looked to be in their late 20s, unshaven, wearing stained clothes. They gave us this long, lingering stare as they walked past, not saying a word. Then they climbed into the van and just sat there. I felt uneasy immediately. "That was weird," I whispered to Derek. "They're probably just heading out," he said, shouldering his backpack. "Come on, we're losing daylight." The hike to the camping area was only about 1.5 miles, but it was uphill most of the way. I'd been to this area 3 or 4 times before with friends, so I knew the layout pretty well. There were multiple clearings where people typically set up camp, scattered throughout the forest. As we approached the main area, I noticed smoke rising from further up the hillside. Someone else was camping up there. "Let's pick a spot down here," I suggested, pointing to a flat area partially hidden by thick pine trees. "Give us some privacy." We found a decent spot that felt tucked away, surrounded by trees on 3 sides. As we started unpacking, I heard voices echoing from somewhere above us. Sounded like arguing or maybe just loud conversation. So much for being alone out here, I thought. By the time we got the tent set up and our sleeping bags arranged, the sun was already dipping below the tree line. The temperature was dropping fast. "I'm going to scout around for firewood before it gets too dark," I told Derek. I'd barely taken 10 steps when a voice behind me made me jump. "You folks need any firewood?" I spun around to find a man standing there, seemingly appearing out of nowhere. He was tall, probably early 40s, with a scraggly beard and hollow eyes. His clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He was holding an armful of branches and sticks. "I can sell you this bundle here for $10, he offered, with a strange smile that didn't reach his eyes. I almost laughed. "We're literally surrounded by wood. I can just pick some up off the ground for free." His smile faded. "You won't find much. Me and the guys already collected most of it over the past month or so." "Past month?" I repeated. "You've been camping here for a month? 5 weeks, actually, give or take." He dropped the wood on the ground. "It's just me up there. Gets lonely, you know? You're the first people I've seen in weeks." Something about his story didn't add up. "Really? Because I just heard you talking to someone up there a few minutes ago." He blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, well, yeah. There's a couple guys I know camped on the other side of the creek, but I don't see them much." "I thought you said you've been alone." "Yeah, well, mostly alone." He shifted his weight nervously. "Look, I came from Michigan originally. Took a bus down to Lexington a while back. I was staying in some woods behind the shopping district there, but it got too crowded, you know. Too many people. So I came out here instead. It's peaceful. Been living off the land, caught some snakes, ate some grubs and berries. Sold firewood when hikers came through, but like I said, you're the first ones in a while." Derek had walked over by this point. The man's story kept changing, contradicting itself. If he was alone, who was he yelling at earlier? If we were the first people in weeks, who had he been selling firewood to? And if he came from Michigan, why did he say he took a bus to Lexington? Nothing made sense. "Hey, you want to see my setup?" the man asked suddenly. "It's pretty cool. I'll show you." Before we could decline, he started walking up the hill, clearly expecting us to follow. Derek and I exchanged glances. Against my better judgment, we followed him. His campsite was up on a rocky outcrop overlooking the entire area, and it was extensive. Multiple tarps strung between trees, several backpacks, cooking equipment, even a small propane stove. Way too much gear for one person. "Nice view from up here," he said, gesturing broadly. "I can see everything. Everyone who comes and goes." Then he pointed directly at our campsite below. "I can see your tent perfectly from here." My stomach tightened. This was wrong. Everything about this situation was wrong. The man helped us carry some of his firewood back down to our site, and even helped Derek get the fire started. I kept trying to politely hint that we wanted to be alone, that we appreciated his help, but we were good now. He didn't take the hint. He just kept talking, telling more inconsistent stories about how he ended up out here. Finally, he stood up. "Well, I'll let you folks enjoy your evening. I'm right up there if you need anything." He smiled that unsettling smile again and disappeared into the darkness. The second he was gone, I grabbed Derek's arm. "We need to leave. Right now." "What?" "We just got here. Derek, that guy is not okay. His stories make no sense. He's clearly not alone up there, despite what he says. And he's been watching us." "I am not staying here. Let's just give it a couple hours," Derek said. "We drove all this way." I reluctantly agreed, but I couldn't relax. We sat by the fire trying to enjoy the evening, but every sound made me jump. Around 10 p.m., we climbed into the tent and zipped it up. Derek fell asleep almost immediately, but I just lay there, wide awake, listening. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling our tent. Then the sound of branches snapping, like someone was standing just outside, shifting their weight. I held my breath, straining to hear. The footsteps would stop for a minute, then start again. This went on for nearly an hour. I shook Derek awake and whispered urgently, "Someone is outside. He's watching us. We need to go, now." Derek listened for a moment and heard it too. His face went pale. We both started quietly stuffing things into our backpacks in the dark, moving as silently as possible. The footsteps continued circling. We left the tent standing because collapsing it would make too much noise and alert whoever was out there that we were leaving. I slowly unzipped the tent just enough for us to crawl out. We shouldered our packs and started moving as quickly and quietly as we could toward the trail. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. We'd made it maybe 30 yards when his voice cut through the darkness. "Leaving so soon?" We ran. I've never run so fast in my life. We crashed through the woods, not caring about the noise anymore, just needing to get away. Behind us, I heard him yelling, "Come back! Where are you going? Come back!" That only made us run faster. Branches whipped my face. Roots tried to trip me, but I didn't stop. The trail seemed endless. Finally, we burst out into the parking lot. Our car was there, but so was the VW van. It was still there. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the door. We peeled out of there and didn't stop driving until we were back on the highway, at least 20 miles away. Only then did I start crying, partly from relief, partly from the adrenaline crash, partly from realizing how bad that situation could have gone. The next morning, I called the forest ranger station and told them everything. About the man, his inconsistent stories, his camp, the way he'd been watching us. They said they'd send someone to investigate, but I never heard back about what they found. We lost a tent, 2 sleeping bags, and some camping gear that night. But honestly, I consider that a fair trade for getting out of there safely. I truly believe if we'd stayed, something terrible would have happened. That man wasn't alone. His behavior, his lies, the way he positioned his camp to watch everyone. He was either running from something or planning something. I haven't been camping since, and I don't think I ever will again.